Hey everybody, it's Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackard.
And also me.
And you're watching episode 215 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. Big episode, big thing today. Victoria, what are we talking about?
As Buck would have it, parts 1 through 3, and the album review.
72, yep.
Yep, that's the number I sure said.
That's the number. Long road home. Yeah, we're doing all 3 parts and the review. This is probably going to be a very long video.
Oh man, I sure can't believe all those things that definitely happened in this 3-parter and whole album that we know about how it ends.
I can't believe that Buck and Jules got stranded together in that rocket that went to the moon.
I can't believe the rocket exploded right before they were about to leave it. This is so tragic.
Who swept in on a jetpack to
Captain
save
Absolutely.
them? It was Buck's mother.
Oh, Buck's mother's Captain Absolutely.
Yep,
That's
the whole
crazy.
time. Yep.
We got to learn all about Cash Money, Nickelback, Backstreet Boys,
Skinheart Flint,
Backyard,
Skinheart Glomgold,
Skinheart Glomgold, Miscommunication, Adoption. We have everything here.
Yeah.
Just take everything I just said and make that the episode description.
Okay. As Buck would have it, Part 1, Episode 931, written by Kathy Buchanan. Elaborate on your previous amazing episode description.
Okay, thank you. So Eugene and Katrina are finally going to officially adopt Buck. I will be honest, kind of thought that already happened, but I guess not. So they are going to go meet with someone right after Eugene destroys their car Eugene reinvents the smart car, basically, while Katrina's in it. And then he blasts her with heat, something Eugene has done so many times to Katrina in a car. Now we have multiple instances of Katrina being stuck in a car and just being blasted by heat by Eugene. And I'm like, please save this poor woman.
I feel like it's underappreciated, that line where she's like, it's starting to smell like potpourri in here because he's like roasting all the flowers that he put in there.
And so they go off to a meeting. Buck is with Jules. Buck gets like a weird, what was it, like a letter?
It was
or
a
something
text.
Like that? A text saying like, hey, look at this thing in this place. And it's like an old newspaper article or something.
Yeah.
And it mentions his dad. And then he's like, his dad like got in a car crash or something like that. And there was another person in the car too.
Who's driving it.
Yeah. And
Buck is like,
to learn more about it.
Well, that's strange, but doesn't find it at all concerning that an unknown number randomly sends him an article about his father's death.
And so Buck and Jules go investigate more about that. In their plot, they go to the newspaper place. They talk to the guy who wrote the article. Then they talk to the police officer who arrested
the sheriff.
Cash. Who is Buck's dad, which is still a very silly name.
It's a nickname.
Still, it's a silly nickname. So like Cash was trying to get a job when he learned his wife was pregnant at the newspaper place. His car broke down along the way. He stole a car, drove to his job interview, was arrested mid-interview by his friend who was an officer for stealing a car. And the guy's like, and that was the weirdest job interview I was ever a part of. And I was like, I'm glad it didn't get worse. I'm glad there wasn't a worse one. That'd be hard to top. So he tells Buck and Jules that he'll like go through his old stuff and see if he can find any more details about the story.
Mm-hmm.
Buck and Jules go talk to the police officer, and the officer recognizes Buck because he looks so much like his dad. We don't really get a whole lot more stuff from that talk.
Yeah.
Except for there is a old...
Oh, yeah, all the
like
stuff that belonged
safety
to him.
deposit thing or something.
Yeah, it was like a storage unit that had a bunch of his stuff.
And it has some of Cash's stuff.
And the sheriff was like, we were friends, so I like took it and locked it up at my place, and so now you can go through it. And I was like, definitely won't be any sort of valuables that anyone's after, because that's never happened to Buck.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know about you.
There's no
that guy's
treasure
so
map.
suspicious.
No treasure
I don't
map.
trust that man at all.
What, the sheriff?
Yeah. I don't trust him.
I mean, he already has all that stuff, unless it's like, oh, I need you to unlock the will. I need your biometrics.
He needs his blood to unlock.
To awaken the runestone.
Yeah. Buck has like the little Anastasia locket, and he has the music box, and he doesn't know where the locket fits into the music box to open it.
Exactly, yeah.
And he doesn't know Once Upon a December, hit Christmas song, Christmas single.
I mean, I was a lot more concerned about Candeez, but...
I was just like, I know they won't, but if Eugene or Buck made that joke, I would laugh for a million years. I
would be physically ill. I would laugh so hard if Eugene Meltzner made a Candeez Nutz joke on Adventures in Odyssey.
It'd be so funny.
It would be maybe the funniest thing that had ever happened in my entire life.
I like how monotone you're saying that. I was thinking, like, Eugene doesn't like her. If he met her and then he made that joke to her face, that would be the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
She'll be like, well, that's a series wrap on me, and gets in her car and drives off to another city, start a brand new life. Burn it all down, folks.
I've been burned so badly I can never adopt your child. And Eugene's like, yes, I want.
Burn it all down, folks, which is a somewhat loaded phrase in Harlanville, I imagine.
Oh my gosh. Devin, I'm a comedy master.
That's true. I would not have thought of that if you hadn't said it.
When I sent you that message, I almost put, like, Eugene, like, right before. And I was like, I want to see your reaction to me just
So
saying.
What happens in Eugene and Katrina's side of the episode?
So they are literally about to, like, they're being told that they can now adopt Buck. And then their, agent, what is it?
Yeah, well, there was, like, the agent there in general who's working on it, but then their, like, social worker for their case.
Yeah, facility, whatever.
The social worker was the other person who came, Edna Platt, who, she was the one who was in the chainsaw
She was the one who was like, Buck probably shouldn't juggle chainsaws.
Yeah.
And then Eugene was like, says who? My son can do whatever he wants.
Look. When I was a boy, my father let me juggle chainsaws, and I turned out just fine after he went and faked his death for 20 years in the middle of the Congo jungle.
And so then they're in this meeting. Edna Platt comes in and says that they found out recently that Buck has a, like, second cousin or
first cousin, I think,
like that, first cousin, who, or like it's Buck's dad's cousin. Right?
Was it?
Yeah. It's Cash's cousin.
Okay. I guess that makes more sense.
So, second cousin?
No, it would be his first cousin once removed.
Oh, okay. I don't know how cousins work. So, they're like, technically, we're supposed to give priority to people who are biologically related to Buck. So he's got to meet her, even if he doesn't end up choosing to live with her, because he is allowed to choose whatever he wants to do. So Eugene and Katrina hadn't told Buck that they were planning on adopting him, and they have a conversation about it in the kitchen, and Buck walks in at the worst possible time. And Buck overhears them talking in a way which makes it sound like they never want to adopt him. And then Buck's like, they don't love me, I'm unlovable. And then he, like, goes and talks to Jules, and he's like, Jules, tell me every single bad thing about you. And Jules is like, I can only think of two, about me. And Jules is like, I can literally only think of, like, two things about you that I don't like. and I like everything else. And I was like, oh. And Buck's like, then why don't they love me? And I was like, oh no, Buck. Why when they created Buck Oliver and then the entire fandom, they created Buck Oliver in album 53.
Yeah.
And then the entire album, like, everyone looked at him in the fandom and they just, like, held him gently and they all said, you're our new Blorbo. And then the writers proceeded to say, what if every bad thing ever happened to your Blorbo?
Well, Victoria, that's called writing.
It's called conflict. Buck is very upset, and Eugene and Katrina decide they
to be
just
naughty.
Happen to
be naughty
coincidentally want to happen to go to the place where Buck's cousin might or might not work. It's just a coincidence.
Who knows?
And do some little, one might call it surveillance, but we're not going to call it surveillance because
one might call it stalking, wrong. But we would never use those terms.
We're going to call it nature watching. So Eugene and Katrina go on their nature watch, and they meet Buck's cousin, who's actually a very lovely individual and a Christian and has a very loving family.
Very lovely.
Allegedly. And was also given a suspicious letter or something like that recently that told them about Buck or something like that.
Is that how she found out? I can't remember now.
Yeah, she was, like, given something, too. And I was just like, this is so suspicious. Like, Buck got a random thing, and she got a random thing, like, letting her know about, like, Buck, and now she's gonna adopt Buck, and just, like, this is sus, and I feel like the police officer is behind it, or something like that. And so, Eugene and Katrina talk to her, and she realizes, like, who they are as they're leaving. And she's just like, it's really nice to meet you. I just want the best for Buck, basically. And then the episode ends, and Eugene and Katrina are like, is that gonna be Buck's new mom? And they're, like, crying in a car, and I was like, I can't handle this. And Buck still thinks no one loves him. And that was the end of part 1, and I was like, I hate it here.
Yeah, so we start out Eugene and Katrina, and Katrina's driving, and Eugene is
right. They talked about the what are they called?
The Burnett's.
The Burnett's.
Yeah. Which is how the misunderstanding happened, because Eugene is like, my foster parents didn't love me, and so I want Buck to know.
Very much not true, but, like, Eugene's like, I thought they didn't love me because they didn't officially adopt me, and me just sitting there realizing I know nothing about the difference, basically, between foster kid and adopted kid.
Well, one is like, you are part of our family, you have our last name, and you're our kid, you're legally our child, and the other one is like, hey, you live here, and we give you food.
Yeah, I know. I've always just thought of, like, them being a lot more similar than they actually are.
I agree. So, in my mind, if you're fostering someone, it's like, well, you're part of the family. You're basically adopted. In my mind, it's all a lot.
Which isn't necessarily true, because you might have a lot of foster kids cycling in and out and stuff at a time. But I was very surprised to hear that, even though I shouldn't have been, that the Burnetts never actually adopted Eugene. Because I always just kind of accepted the fact that, like, they're his parents.
Yeah.
So just hearing, like, yeah, they never, like, adopted me, technically, and I felt like they didn't love me, and I was like, 1, this is so sad, 2, I'm very surprised, but, like, also, the Burnetts, like, they could be a little Penny's parents-ish. I kind of get why he might have gotten that impression a little bit.
I like how we got even more stories of terrorizing
as Eugene was talking about his childhood, I was actively
intentions.
Envisioning you typing all this, just like the SpongeBob meme. I was like, write that down, and just like you updating your wiki entry for Eugene.
It's so good, because I mean, it was Leonard and Thelma who were subjected to the shock fridge.
Oh, was it?
I think so, because he said my mother and my father. Yeah,
you're right.
Which it wasn't until a minute ago that I was like, oh yeah, that wasn't the Burnetts.
So we have the shock fridge and the murder shower now.
and he said a couple other things too in here.
Yeah,
but he's a terror. Yeah, and I just love that because
good for him.
He did mention the chalk fridge in another episode during the Leonard Meltzner saga.
Yeah, he mentioned it initially to Katrina before they found Leonard.
Yeah,
and then Leonard mentioned it in A New Era Part 2
so
or something like that.
Where it's like, I mean, I think my parents would have cared for me and want to find me. I mean, sure, you know, there was the occasional bathtub incident or electrocuting them with the fridge. So, yeah, Eugene's super anxious. He's, like, installed spyware override on their car, and Katrina was talking. I was like, oh, it's so good to hear Katrina's voice. It's been so long. I missed her.
I know.
And they're talking about adoption. I was like, fuck adoption. Oh, my heart beating. Oh, it's
but, like,
so beautiful.
I feel like Eugene would either be the best or the worst at April Fool's Day. And there's no in between, and I now need a Eugene April Fool's episode very badly.
And we see Buck and Jules, and I was like, "Aw, hungry Buck. He's a growing boy, and he needs his food." He was like, getting text messages makes me hungry. Jules, give me all your food. I was really surprised, like I said, that he was not a lot more concerned about getting this random text that clearly knew exactly who he was and knew about his past, but he didn't know who it was from, because I would have immediately assumed it had something to do with Mr. Skint if I received that.
When the cousin was mentioned and the gender wasn't mentioned immediately, I was wondering if it was...
Skint.
No. I'll wait.
Oh, if it... yeah. Well, we've talked about the Richard theory before. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, but, like, I was like, I don't know if Richard could fall under anything that could be construed as, like, cousin.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah. He was
so
not,
I was just like, I don't know if, like...
That would make sense there. It was like, well, he's the son of my mom's ex-boyfriend.
I just really want Richard to come back.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I'm sure I had because I was surprised when they said it was a woman, because in my mind, I guess I just assumed it was Skint. Because, I mean, we said this in, like, The Long End, but it literally became like a Count Olaf situation, where it's like, I gotta get his fortune, I gotta find the treasure.
Well, we were talking about that in the Jules California episode, where I was theorizing that her mom's boyfriend was gonna be Skint, and it'd be like really funny and straight up a series of unfortunate events, and just Buck calling on like Skype and being like, "Why is Mr. Skint in your house?"
Yeah, I know that. I forgot about that we talked about it there too. It would have been insanely funny and terrifying. But yeah, I also could have seen it's like... The
sheriff was just like, Mr. Skint adopted you or whatever, right? And Buck's like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really roll with him these days.
And the sheriff's like, that's good. That guy was really sketchy. And I was like, if he was so sketchy, why did you let him go with him?
This was your buckaroni, man. Come on. Yeah, it would have been wild if they're like, oh yeah, it's his cousin Candeez, and then Candeez shows up and she's like, hello, and she was just Count Skint in a wig.
I'm still laughing at her name.
Doing like a Mrs. Doubtfire kind of thing.
Imagine it. Them sitting at a table
Victoria,
discussing
I imagined it. It was very
adoption
funny.
Possibilities. Buck is also there. It's Buck, Eugene, Katrina, and Candeez. And then Eugene looks her dead in the eyes. And
Victoria, what because when they were like, it's a diner, I was like, I hope it's not a gas diner, or a diner and gas station, because my eyes were drawn to the album art.
Well, it's Connie on the album art.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Connie,
I forgot.
Buck, and Eugene.
I forgot. I was immediately like, oh no, what if they burn? Well, I was like, but maybe it's still the same location, like later, because also Buck wasn't there. I was like, later on, they're going to accidentally burn down the diner.
Eugene burns down the diner. Is that you can't adopt my son?
Once again, a little bit Count Olaf. Buck just can't escape from it. That's how VFD rolls.
Got to hear Cash's voice.
We
He
did.
sounds a lot like Buck. I thought it was very sweet. Buck, Candeez, and Cash all have like the same, like not even the same accent, but like the same level of just like strongness of their accent, and I thought it was very cute.
Yeah.
Candeez said that she was like really close with Cash when they were younger,
but then they grew apart. They
drifted apart,
which is it's a good cover, because if she was like, oh yeah, we were always super close, then it would be like, so was she also like a criminal?
So, question time. Do you think Candeez is actually related to Buck? Which I didn't think of until right now. What if she's not actually related to him?
I mean, I feel like probably she's doing a con. Maybe she's the red herring and it's the sheriff, like you said, although I don't know exactly.
I don't trust the sheriff.
Why? I don't at all. I didn't feel any need to distrust the sheriff, because he already has...
I find it weird that he is like supposedly Cash's best friend and just like arrests him multiple times.
Well, he was, and then Cash did all the stuff, and that's why he was like...
It's straight up that Yahoo from a Bim Bam. It's just like, I have to arrest my neighbor. He doesn't know I'm police. And then they talk about what if your neighbor was Jigsaw for 10 minutes.
No, it's like...
What if Sheriff was Jigsaw?
They've had the same kind of dynamic happened in Ethersea, in Places You Haven't Got Yet, where it's like, oh yeah, we used to be best friends, but like, now you're a cop, and so you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, but like, I have to.
Jean Valjean.
But it's like, I really don't want to do this, but I have to, because this is the path I chose, and it's the path you chose, and it hurts me. I don't want to do this, because he was very remorseful.
That sounds very shippy, honestly, in Ethersea.
He was very remorseful in what he had to do, like, bringing Cash in.
I don't know. Something...
It seems to me, it's like he already has all of this stuff that was Cash's, and if it was like, oh, there's something in here that I need, and I need you to be able to get at it, then that would feel too similar to the Long End to me, I guess, where it's like, oh, we need you because you're the key to unlock this like treasure left behind.
Can you give me a refresher again on what happened in like the painting one with Buck? Like, what did we learn about his parents in that one again?
Well, we learned that his dad was named Cash and that he died in a car accident.
And this is the car accident he died in.
Yeah, which is why Buck was like, I didn't learn anything new yet. When he was like, okay, 14 years ago, my dad died in a car accident. This is the stuff that I learned last time. But then he also learned, oh, he wasn't the driver. There was someone else, and they were driving the car, but we don't know who it was.
Is there any chance it could have been his mom?
Well,
because that was the first thing I thought of.
I mean, I'm trying to remember. Did his mom outlive his dad? Or did she die first?
I told you, I don't remember the other three-parter very well. I need to re-listen to it.
Considering she's also gone, I feel like it can't be that. It needs to be something else. I mean, what if...
Because I got like big Bonnie and Clyde vibes from that.
I do understand now that you mentioned like, oh, Candeez got like a note. Like, it makes sense that like, if the sheriff guy needed to like get at Buck somehow, that he would like send, he would send a text, and he would find some police way to get Buck's cell number, and then he would send a text about the thing, and then he would also send a message to Candeez, because he would have known her if he was best friends with Cash, probably, and she was really close with him growing up. He would have known her and been like, hey, Buck Brownie, he's around, and you can adopt him, and try and make that connection to try and pull Buck into the web because of what he knows is in the stuff that and that's why it happened now, was because he had just found that stuff.
Also, he could potentially be Candeez's husband.
He could be. That's true.
She mentioned. Or
that would be
you
very
want to go real crack theory. Buck's mom isn't dead, and Buck's mom is Candeez. I
think that would be weird. I don't know why she wouldn't just come forward and identify herself if that was the case.
She's a criminal. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it shouldn't be as easy as like, oh, it's the sheriff is evil and he's tricking both of them. Or as simple as like...
it's never going to be easy.
Exactly.
The last 3-parter we listened to was the, like, Mori Suzu Emily mind melt.
Yeah.
So, actually, no, that wasn't the last 3-parter, was it?
Maybe.
It feels like that was the last 3-parter.
But I'll also say this, like, because I was trying to assess, like, oh, is Candeez, like, evil? And she was like, oh, I'm so nice, and we teach Sunday school, the church right around the block, and stuff. And then she's also like, oh, here's your credit card, you dropped it. And I was like, she could be trying to put on exceptionally good behavior in general, but also she saw the credit card and she saw who it belonged to, so she's like, I have to return this so that I can, like, get in good graces and they'll let me have buck.
Or she's evil, and she was like, I already memorized your credit card number.
Exactly, yeah, I already have the CVV, like, what else do I need?
I actually already had your credit card numbers before you even came to the restaurant to see me, but, like, thank you for letting me confirm 100% that I do have it memorized.
Yeah, and, like, Eugene, I love the fact that you're like, oh, we go to the church right around the corner, and Eugene's like, what's their doctrinal statement? She was like, I don't know it off the top of my head. It's like, oh, he's so cute and concerned about Buck.
He's like protective dad. Between this episode and reading the Reagan manga last night, I was just like, protective dad's my favorite type of character.
And just like the whole thing talking about what he went through with the Burnett's was so sad, where it was like, I was with them for 10 plus years and never once did the topic come up, and I tried to do all of these things so that I could show them that I was useful to them and that, like, I was valuable for them to keep me around, and I was so sad. And then Buck comes in and he hears the line about, like, not feeling like there was no bond forming and not wanting to adopt, and I was like, no, I'm gonna be ill. This is the worst. Like... This is the worst overheard misunderstanding in history. And also the fact that not only did he hear Eugene say, like, oh, you know, not wanting to adopt and bond forming, but he also said, like, there's this obligation that they put on you to, like, adopt, which means that even if Eugene was like, hey, we're gonna adopt you, that he's still gonna think like, oh, he's just doing it because of this.
Yeah, because he feels forced into it and doesn't actually want to do it. It sucks.
Which is the worst part. That's the worst. If it was like, oh, we don't want to adopt Buck and Buck feels bad, then he'll know that wasn't the case as soon as they ask. But because he overheard Eugene being like, oh, there's this pressure that they put on you to adopt. Now there's no way. I mean, obviously we'll find a way there, but it's going to be a lot harder for Buck to trust, even after being asked, that that's what Eugene actually wants and that he doesn't feel like he's being coerced into it.
Remind me again, how much does Buck know about the Burnetts?
I don't know. We know there was, like, the one time at least where Eugene mentioned, like, I was also, like, adopted. Well, not adopted, but a foster child.
Eugene and Buck need to, like, it's
I was so glad
overdue.
That Eugene mentioned it.
Like,
he, like, talked about them and name dropped them and had a whole conversation with anecdotes, and I was really surprised. It's so rare, even though it's wild, because we have this whole arc ongoing.
I love it when the Burnetts
about Eugene being a foster parent, and yet it's so rare for him to mention, in general, let alone to Buck, anything about the fact that he went through the exact same thing, which is crazy.
Which I feel like
he should bring it up all the time.
After this episode, it's so much more, like, justifiable that Eugene doesn't mention the Burnetts as, like, much as he...
Because he doesn't feel like their family as
Yeah,
much.
exactly. Because there's, like, this emotional disconnect. And even, like, you go back to... It's going to make me sad now going back to it. Sadder than I was before. The first Burnetts episode. Yeah. Where he actually goes to their house and he says, like, I always thought you guys didn't want me. And it's just like, Eugene! Eugene, no! And they're like, no, we did love you, and you're part of the family. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm just, like, crying.
You're part of the family, just, like, not.
Just not legally. I mean, it does cost a lot of money to technically adopt, doesn't it?
Probably. I'm sure it varies location to location, but yes, I'm sure it's a very arduous and, like, legal process, and there's so much paperwork and court stuff that you have to file.
I know I've said this in past episodes, but, like, I'm going to say it again. I'll never understand why calling someone adopted or being told you're adopted is considered, like, bad.
Well, Victoria, it's like this, because people have a strong prejudice towards the idea that biologically related is superior and meaningful in a way that it's not.
I know, it's stupid. I mean, like, there is the whole thing that someone could posit, like, your original parents didn't
want you,
love you, or didn't want you, or something like that. It's just like, these people came into my life, and they could have picked, like, anyone. And they chose me because they saw something in me.
And to be fair, I mean, I've always been extremely pro-adoption, but that concept of looking at it like that isn't something I ever considered until Eugene said it that way in The Chosen One.
And, like, honestly, I think that's so beautiful. The idea that, like, it's like found family.
Yeah.
Basically.
It's literally like found family.
Legally government-issued found family.
Literally.
And, yeah, it's really sweet. Like, honestly, adoption should be viewed any differently than found family is viewed. It's really beautiful. I just want good things for Buck. I also want good things
for Buck.
We were like, we love our Blorbo. He's so sweet. And they're like, we've done a lot of bad things to your Blorbo, haven't we? And we're like, yeah, Focus, you have. And they're like, what if we gave your Blorbo a puppy? And we're like, really, Focus? And then a couple albums later, they're like, your puppy's gonna die. Like, why are you doing that?
The puppy got hit by a car, and we had to amputate one of its legs.
And your Blorbo's waiting, crying.
He's literally desiccated from crying.
He literally couldn't cry anymore if he tried because he's so upset about his puppy getting hit by a car. And it's like, why would you... First off, why would you do this to me? But more importantly, why would you do this to him or his dog? It's so upsetting.
It was
like,
upsetting.
Hey, we know that happened. What if your Blorbo thought he wasn't loved by the people who were gonna adopt him?
It's not the first time. It's like, this whole arc is just Buck's constant insecurity parade. By the people who care about him so much.
Focus is like, wouldn't be Eugene's kid or Connie's godchild if we didn't have abandonment
family
issues.
Insecurities.
And a bunch of insecurities about whether people love him or not. Like,
I just remembered, speaking of the one where Buck's like, you don't understand what it's like, Jules, where it's like, you know, not knowing anything about, like, your family and stuff like that.
Oh, and she was like, and she's like, I wish I didn't know.
There are some stories I wish I didn't know. And I was like, I would say the same thing if I was the child of William
and I was like,
Kendall.
I too wish I did not know Bill Kendall.
Or your mother, for that matter.
Yeah, her mom.
I don't know your mom that well, either. Jules, but she doesn't seem excellent either.
Oh, we got a Jillian mention. We got a Jillian mention in this. How has it been 34 minutes? And we haven't met this. We have to end the podcast, Devin. We have to quit. We failed. We fundamentally failed. Jillian was mentioned, and crime of all crimes, the world was not all paying attention to every word that came out of Jules' mouth when she was talking about Jillian.
This is why Buck had to be punished.
Buck did not hear what she said about Jillian, and that is crime. Everyone needs to pay attention
and
to Jillian.
And everything bad that happened to Buck in this episode is recompense.
And that's why you always pay attention to Jillian.
To Jillian Marshall, double L Jillian, double O Marshall. I think that's all I have to say about the first part. So, I feel like we don't have any super solid predictions, but we've talked about some theories in terms of, you know, who's evil.
I'm wondering how Connie's gonna play into this.
Yeah, so am I.
I mean, like, Jules might...
Oh, also, I forgot to say, they were like, we're gonna head out for Harlanville at, like, 6 a.m. to go there and find out what's going on. And I was like...
Oh, wait, I remembered. Also, one of the main reasons why Eugene was... turning his car into a big remote control car was so that he could, like, baby-proof it when Buck is driving in case it's not safe for him. And I was like...
And that brings me exactly to what I was going to say when they're like, we won't tell Eugene and Katrina we're going to go to Harlanville without them. And I was like, boy, I bet the fact that Eugene installed all this stuff that he could use to track the location of the car definitely is not going to come into play with him realizing that Buck went to Harlanville without telling him.
Oh, man. You're right. I bet it's going to be that, like, Buck and Jules are, like, off. Mm-hmm. And then Connie either calls Eugene or Eugene calls Connie. Be like, is Buck at your place? I don't know where Buck is. And Connie can be like, I don't know where Jules is, but she's probably with Buck. And then Connie uses the tracker she like sewed into Jules' outfit, and Eugene uses his car tracker, and they're like, oh, this is where they are. And then they go hunt them down together.
Do you know where your child is? Would you like to know? Which is funny because there is an Edna in this episode.
I think one of the best choices that, like, Focus made when it comes to the whole, like, Eugene is a dad, Connie's basically a mom, is that those things happen very close together. So that they're on this
same track, together. I agree.
Like, I'm glad there wasn't, like, a huge time gap.
Well, especially between, like, because Buck and Jules were both previously introduced prior to that point, and and like several years apart from each other.
Yeah.
And yet, it's like Buck was way back here, and then Jules was here. But then it was after that when they both came permanently onto the scene, but those were at the same time.
I know it's basically just, like...
Granted, Jules was, like, right before.
That Buck and Jules are a couple just because they...
It sure does seem to be.
They basically are a couple without actually putting a label on it.
As far as we've heard recently.
Or, I mean, like, they've basically become that level of closeness where you can pretty much call them a couple, but they probably wouldn't call themselves
it's like everyone else.
A couple.
Everyone else calls them a couple behind their backs, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think it's really sweet that they have this thing I really like in ships where it's like they're best friends first and then they become a couple, because that just means like they didn't like rush into becoming a couple and they truly like understand each other. They made each other better people. They helped each other grow. Yeah. I like that.
Should we end it here so we can go into part 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any last minute predictions, I guess?
I don't think so.
Okay.
The last thing I had was about the car tracker being used to find
I definitely think you're right about the car thing. I'm hoping Katrina is going to be in the next 2 parts as much as she was in this episode.
Sure hope so.
Because my only worry is like Connie being there might...
Like, be like, we don't need Katrina. We have Connie here. Yes, I also, that is my one fear also.
Or not Katie, Kathy's writing this, so like that probably won't happen, but yeah.
Yeah.
We still need our heist episode with all the women.
I know.
Add that to my list of episodes I need to have.
Consider it added.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about part 2. So, part 2 of As Buck Would Have It, episode 932, written by Kathy Buchanan.
Alright, I'm gonna do my best to recall everything that happens in this one, because it's been a little bit. So, easiest thing to start with on Eugene and Katrina's side of things. Eugene and Katrina finally decide that they'll tell Buck that they want to adopt him, but it is unfortunately too late, because Buck thinks they're doing that just out of obligation. So he says, not only does he say, I don't want to be adopted by you guys, he says, I don't want to be adopted by anybody. And he's just kind of waiting to age out of the system. And he's really upset. And Jules is like, Buck, and I am also too distraught.
Buck,
I heard that bit
self-sabotaging
when I was
your emotional health is what
riding the train home, and I was like, I hope I don't cry, so no one sees me crying on the train. And then with everything else that's going on, I actually called the majority of the other stuff that was happening. I don't know if you noticed or remembered.
Oh, I did.
That? Okay. So, the detective guy, sketchy as heck. He is definitely trying to get stuff out of the vault, and I was right that he was waiting and he specifically needed Buck to get it for him for some reason.
Right? That was like the one thing I was like...
Even though this is like really, really old safe, it's like biometric scanning.
I mean, to be fair, a fingerprint scan isn't like super duper new technology.
Yeah, but imagine how expensive that would have been.
Would have been very expensive.
And Buck's dad didn't have that much money. That's why he was stealing
and
all
also,
this stuff.
He would have used
Unless
Buck's fingerprint.
Stole the biometric safe.
He would have scanned... I mention it later, but I'm like... I'm pretty sure if you take someone's fingerprint, especially when, like, how old this safe is, like, it's older fingerprinting tech, if you took Buck's fingerprint when he was, like, 2 years old or whatever...
Okay, here's the thing I was thinking about. They did make a point of saying fingerprints don't change, but the thing is...
Fingerprints don't change, but they grow because your finger grows.
Change. Fingerprints, like, the pattern will mostly stay the same, but if you're someone like me, and you have to get, like, something burnt off a finger or something like that, that is going to fundamentally change your fingerprint.
Yes,
that
that's
part
true.
of your fingerprint will just disappear.
If there's
like, my fingerprints are just permanently changed now from what they were like when they were little. If you get, like, a big scar on your finger or something like that, that bit of your fingerprint isn't going to come back. Yeah. So Buck, who I'm imagining has pretty rough hands from all the different things he's gone through, I'm surprised that, like, it worked still. I know it's like a narrative thing, but like...
Well, like I said,
I feel like technically in real life, it probably shouldn't have worked.
The thing that surprises me more than that is the fact that he had like a baby-sized finger when it would have been taken, and now he has like an adult-sized finger, unless Buck has one like weirdly baby-sized finger his whole life.
Buck just has one finger that's like that tall.
He has one little baby finger, and you don't talk about it, but it is able to open the safe, and he just covers it with the thimble like Elizabeth Bioshock. Anyways.
And the newspaper guy, he's cool, though.
Yeah.
He, I was saying to Devin before, it's a very long and arduous process, going through the Ace Attorney games right now, and I'm going through the First Miles game, and never before have I so deeply appreciated when a witness like tells you the truth on everything and gives you all the evidence you have, and is just like super upfront and helps you with the case, as opposed to everyone else is just lying to you constantly and trying to get in your way and possibly trying to kidnap you or harm you in some way. But like the newspaper guy, it's just like every single time he does anything, he's like so helpful, and he's just the best, and I love him. And if he somehow turns out to be a traitor, even though I doubt he will because he's great, I will feel so betrayed.
Yeah, it is nice in a mystery when a witness is like, it's the worst when a witness is like, okay, I know you're lying to me, and I know you're not the one who even did it, you're just trying to hide this other little thing, and it's like, that doesn't matter right now, just tell us the truth. And the thing, when you said that, the thing I thought of was the very end of Murder Room Season 2, when they're like, the person that we picked and stuff like that, you're like, well,
I've only seen like the first episode.
Oh, you haven't watched the rest of it. Okay,
so
okay.
You can talk about what you're talking about, just be vague, I guess.
No, it has to do with like whether or not they picked the right person at the end. So But the point is, obviously, in a mystery like that, everyone is like hiding something, and they're literally like, just like, we know that you're lying about this because like other people have told us this stuff. So just like tell us. And they're like, yeah, okay, I did that thing. And it's like, okay, like if you get wrongfully convicted because you didn't tell us this stuff, this other stuff that doesn't have to do with the fact that you didn't commit the murder, then That's on you. That's your fault that you got like.
There's so many characters like that in Ace Attorney, especially in the first investigations game. Like, I was thinking about it last night, and between the 7 games I've gone through so far, and there's like 10 in the main series, there's only like straight up one suspect / defendant I can think of who's literally been honest with me 100% of the time, never hid anything from me. She's one of my favorite characters. I love her so much. She's Phoenix's daughter, and Apollo's sister, and I think that's one of the reasons why she was so easy to work with. And the other one is this random witness in the game I'm going through right now, and everyone else is a liar. Everyone else lies about everything, and it's so frustrating. But like, yeah, like I said, that's why it's always so nice when there's a character in like any mystery where it's just like they're actually trying to help you and not actively trying to hinder you, or even just like not trying to hinder you, but they are anyway. Mm-hmm. It's just, I appreciate this man. He's good.
Okay. So, yeah, they talk to the newspaper guy, and he's like, here's the cache file. Here's all the information.
And, I don't remember how much they really see that's new stuff in that file.
They already knew at this point there was someone else in the car, but they don't know who it was.
Yeah.
They learn...
There's also, like, a map of...
Yes, the map is in the safe.
In the safe that, like, detective guy wanted to look at, and Jules was like, sure, let's show you. And Buck was just like, I think not. And he slams it in the safe, and I was like, thank you, Buck Oliver, because if there's any character I can trust to not trust anyone,
to not fall for dumb tricks. Yeah.
And I was so worried that for like a minute there that Buck was gonna show him, and then Buck just like slams it in the safe, and it's just like, well, it's pretty late, time to leave. And I was just like, this is why you are my son. I was
expecting Buck to be a little less suspicious about it, but he was clearly like, he tried to be, and the guy was pushing, so he just had to like draw the line where he could as best he could.
It's so funny because the guy's like, open up the safe again, and Buck's like, nah, I don't think I will.
Nah, my finger's tired for today.
You would think he would try to just like break open the safe or something like that.
Well, clearly he couldn't, otherwise he would have.
How funny would it be if you're just like, oh, I never thought of that. I probably could have tried that. At one point they're going to like kick over the safe accidentally, and then it just opens, and he's just like, ah.
They kick it, and the batteries fall out of the back, and it just, the lock comes off. It's
like those little like, diaries where you would like talk into them and it would read your voice. I had one of those as a kid. I don't know if you remember mine.
I do,
but I hate it so much because I could never get it to open for me. So I literally had to reset it all the time, and I could never like perfectly replicate whatever I said into it. And Mom could get it to work, but I could never get it to work for myself. So I always just literally like left something in it, so it was never closed, just completely defeating the purpose.
What you should have done is like played like
don't say recorded myself, because I was like 6.
No, you should have had like a little like 4-note melody or something on the piano that you played, and have that be the audio cue, because then you can...
You really think I was that smart? Also, you guys would have been able to get into it that way.
No, if we didn't know what the notes were.
I would have forgotten what the notes were, probably. But anyway, so we find out that Cash was involved in this, like, jewelry shop theft or something like that, where, like, this big diamond or something was stolen. Mm-hmm. And he confessed to it. And then, like, the diamond wasn't returned, I think, but, like, some other stuff that was stolen was returned.
Well, they were like, he stole the stuff, and then he just returned it later. Yeah. But then they were like, maybe the jewelry shop guy had actually stolen some stuff. And so Cash stole that stuff from him, and then he only gave back the stuff that everyone knew the store had. And the jewelry guy couldn't be like, hey, he stole the other thing, because then people would know that he stole it in the first place. And so that's how he got it. And it was like this whole thing, and I was like trying to keep track of it.
Yeah, stuff, so what it looks like
names of the different jewels.
the detective guy put Cash up to stealing all this stuff. And then Cash kept a hold of the diamond, hid it somewhere, like transcribed on the map that's hidden in the safe where the diamond is hidden. And then instead of like bringing all the stuff to the detective, he sold himself out and he returned like everything else so he wouldn't look like as guilty, like they wouldn't figure out that he was still hiding something from what he stole. And that's why he went to jail originally, I think.
I mean, I don't know if the sheriff, Adam, is like, if he was his partner, because I think they said that on some of the crimes, like, there was another person there, so I assume Adam was the other person. And Adam! And was presumably the person who was in the car, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it suddenly got a lot more complex when it was like, oh, it's a double gem heist or like a triple heist.
Mm-hmm. And Buck and Jules realized that like the map is probably pointing to where the diamond is. So they tried to like sneak into Adam's shed where the safe is in the middle of the night. But there's like dogs or something like that, and the dogs started barking, and then Adam showed up, and now they're just like running away as fast as possible. I think they have the map now.
They have the safe with them, the whole safe. And then the most important part is what they learned from the newspaper about when Cash got arrested on the morning that he interviewed for the newspaper.
I forgot about so much stuff. Okay, this bit actually broke my heart. So the reason why...
It was so sad. It took me, as the way they were explaining it, took me a while to understand exactly what they meant, because I was picturing Eugene as an adult, not as a kid, when they were talking about it first, and then I realized, like, the depth of the tragedy, the tragic irony going on here. I was like, this is gutting Kathy. How could you do this?
Also, it made me really feel how small that age gap is between Eugene and Buck.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
So this was immediately upsetting. Upsetting to the level where you realize the episode is going to end soon and you're holding all your trauma in your mind, so you can just like immediately internally complain about whoever wrote this episode, like on an emotional level. It's like, this episode was so good, but how could you make me feel like this? And so basically we go back to last episode where Eugene was talking about how he tried all these different things to try and get adopted by the Burnett's to be put in their good graces. I'm immediately so upset already. And one of the things was Mr. and Mrs. Burnett's car was stolen. So Eugene tried to play little boy detective and track down
Angus MacDonald.
Car. He was the Angus MacDonald, and he found out who the car thief was, and the car thief did go to jail, but that was Buck's dad. So Buck finds out about this. He finds out it was Eugene, and he starts yelling at Eugene. Katrina's also there in this scene, about how Eugene ruined his entire life because Cash never got his second chance properly to like work at the newspaper and stuff.
Yeah.
And that Eugene's basically only ever brought Buck pain. And I'm just sitting there like on the bus and I'm like, I can't handle this.
I mean, to be fair, Katrina's the one who really screwed up the moment.
I don't remember what Katrina said.
Because Eugene and Katrina are talking about it, and she's like, look, you did the right thing and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, but he's trying to be a good guy, and I understand, like, obviously I couldn't have known and stuff, but this is really hard for Buck. And then Katrina, it's definitely, like, it makes sense. I mean, you look at, like, her upbringing, like, she came from a very, like, old money, like,
privileged,
rich, well-to-do, super privileged background, and she was like, I mean, he was a criminal, and he stole cars once, so he was probably going to steal again.
Yeah, and then Buck happens to hear that as he's coming down the stairs with all his earthly belongings,
literally,
because he's
Katrina's
asking
like,
for another foster family.
But it was his fault because he was a criminal, and he was going to keep being a criminal, so it's his fault he went to jail. And I was like,
And Buck literally cuts her off, and he's just like, that's not true. And they're like, what are you doing with that suitcase? He's like, I'm literally about to call my social worker and get a new foster family until I turn 18 in like a couple months, and then I'm just gone.
I was so horrified that Katrina would say something like that.
I know.
Although it
does, like you said, it does make sense for her character,
Yeah, I really like the fact that it actually really specifically does make sense for her, though, because, like, yeah, she grew up, like, super rich and privileged and stuff like that.
So, like, things I really felt at the end of this episode. One, how much more of, like, a privileged upbringing Katrina has had that, like, in comparison to both Eugene and specifically Buck.
Mm-hmm.
And two, like I said, how tiny that age gap is.
Yeah, I didn't even
them and Buck.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I thought when they're like, "Oh, Eugene was the one who did it," and I was so confused because I was like, "Why did Eugene have his car parked in Harlanville?"
Because yeah, that's what I thought for a second, and then Eugene was just like, "I was just a little baby boy," and I was just like, "Oh no!"
Yeah, so Eugene was like, I don't know, maybe 10 at the time, let's say, and at this exact point, Buck's mom was pregnant with him.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Which, I don't know, maybe I was just, like, really feeling that age separation, because, again, I'm going through Ace Attorney, and I have all these characters who are, like, around my age, or probably about, like, 5 or so years older than me, who meet, like, all these teenagers, and they're like, you don't have parents, and I'm adopting you, and I'm like, this age gap is not very big.
So, okay. So the episode starts with, like you said, Eugene and Katrina, they're like, Buck, we want to adopt you. And he was like, no, heart. And I was like,
no.
And then Jules is like, Buck, what the heck? And he's like, look, I'm more kielbasa than kombucha. I was like, interesting comments with regards to feeling more destined for Harlanville than Odyssey. Because, like, I know that Eugene and Katrina are, like, a little more on the high-class side compared to a lot of Buck's past. I wouldn't exactly describe Odyssey on the whole as, like, such a forward, bougie, hipster town, which is clearly what he means with, like, the kombucha bit. But then...
It just shows, like, all... I don't know, like, all the weird, just kind of country-ish stuff. And he's like, look at them! They're so high-class!
Yeah. But then, to be fair, then he goes to Adam's place. He's like, I'm making shrimp and grits. And Buck's like, boy, howdy. And I was like, okay, I'll grant you, shrimp and grits, probably not a dish that Katrina cooks terribly often. I don't imagine that she grew up on that a lot in the Shanks manor. So it was funny.
Armitage, like, on his deathbed was like, for my final meal, please cook me my shrimp and grits.
Exactly. So it was funny that thought, I'd already made a note specifically about, like, Katrina's upbringing and privilege and, like, her background earlier in the episode, and so that, like, primed my brain later on when she said the other stuff to be like, oh yeah, that does make sense character-wise. So Adam is like, they go to his place to see the safe, and he's super sus, because as soon as the previously on said, and I'd forgotten this, that he was like, oh yeah, I only just found this key for Cash's safety deposit box a couple weeks ago. And I was like, so for seemingly no reason, just a couple of weeks ago, he happens to find the safety deposit box key for Cash, which would then be seemingly completely unrelated to Buck at the same time getting this text message, like, about his past.
I told you that lady and him are working together. I told you.
I don't know if she's related to it. Well, here's the thing. Here's what I thought at this point.
Trust them.
Here's what I thought.
She mentioned having a husband.
She did.
We know nothing about her husband. He could be the husband.
At this point, I was like, this could mean that the text was sent by Sheriff Adam in order to lure Buck out for whatever he needs, which is, like, the most likely thing now, and back then, the most likely scenario. But the fact that he ostensibly just found out about the key also has the possibility that it isn't Adam. And now, in retrospect, like, after the episode, I'm like, okay, he's clearly bad. But at the time, I was like, also possible that someone else wants whatever is in the safe. And so they planted the key for the sheriff to find, and they sent the text to Buck so that, like, these things could be brought together, and Adam is just kind of an unwitting pawn in it. Now, obviously, I don't believe that anymore, but I did think it was an interesting idea to like put on another layer of things where it's like, oh, he really did just find it. Like, he doesn't know what's going on, and someone else planted that so he could find it, and then planted the stuff for Buck so that they would like come together and expose it. I was really happy for Buck, though, in that scene where he got to see all the stuff in the garage. It was so sweet.
Yeah.
And even though, like, I was like,
oh, like, his dad, like, played football when he was little.
Yeah, and he had the bike and stuff like that, and all these things that made Buck be like, oh, I feel like I have this sense of connection, like, to my past for the first time in my life that isn't, like, all negative Mr. Skint stuff and whatnot. And it was really sweet.
Every single time someone mentions Mr. Skint, it's like so funny to me, because every single time they mention him, they're like, you were with that like Mr. Skint guy, like that really shady Mr. Skint guy, and Buck's like, uh-huh. And they're like, well, I'm glad you're not with him anymore. And Buck's like, me too.
Everyone's always like, yeah, he was always kind of weird. I never really trusted that Count Olaf guy. There was always something off about it.
I am looking at the cover again. Mm-hmm. And you know how we thought that was Connie?
Uh-huh.
It's like, that's definitely Jules, probably, isn't it? Have we seen what Jules looks like before?
Yes, I believe. Yeah, because she's on the cover of the show Must Go On, or whatever it's called.
Okay, let me...
The Riley Clemens Farm one.
Let's put on a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's Jules. Because she looks a lot like... Well, you can't really see it that great.
Yeah, like, you're right. Yeah.
That's Jules.
Yeah.
She looks a lot like Connie.
She does look a lot like Connie. It's almost like they're half-sisters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% Jules.
Yeah. Makes more sense, because Connie hasn't been in this at all.
Yeah, I was confused, because I was like, okay, either that's Jules, or Connie is just going to pop in the last part and become very important the whole
that
time,
happened with the long
freaking
end,
out
right?
She has
There's someone
no
who
idea
like,
what's going on.
Finally showed up in the last part.
Yeah.
Anyways, so they're looking through Cash's stuff in the garage, and then the biometric safe shows up, and I was like, there we go. That's our key MacGuffin, because I was like, if they already have got the stuff out of the safety deposit box, someone clearly needs something from Buck, but what is it? Because if it's not like the legal right to open the safety deposit box, then what is it that Buck has that they're after? Because last time it was like either it was getting the safety deposit box, and it was like knowledge of stuff from his childhood. And so I was like, there's something that only Buck can do to get whatever treasure this is. And then they're like, here's a fingerprinted safe.
I said last time was like, I bet the safe, like something that Adams has is like something that only Buck can access.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I thought was kind of ridiculous, because I was thinking like, this is going to be like an old thing.
Exactly,
and, like,
right? That's why I was confused.
Magical artifact do they have
it was
that
like
only Buck
only
can
a descendant of the Oliver
yeah.
line.
So like the storyline there with like the safe that only Buck can open, and the fact that, is it Adams or Adam?
Adam. That's
Adam
his first name.
Is like shady as heck. I was like, I called both those things, and you said you thought he would be cool. So
well, no, I said like at the time, like once you said it, I was like, oh yeah, you're probably right. It hadn't occurred to me before.
I think I said last time, I just don't really trust detective characters in media much anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, he's able to open it with his fingerprint, and I was like, that's weird, because he was a baby before. Unless they like took his fingerprint when he was little, and they like made a mold of it and then stretched it out and then used that to
I thought it was going to be like a blood thing, and then they were like fingerprint, and I was like, that shouldn't work.
Yeah. So yeah, they're like, Adam was like very insistent, obviously, about seeing the map. He's like, let me see it.
Him asking to see the map had big drink this lemonade energy.
It was extremely obvious, and Buck picked up on it immediately.
Yeah, Buck is just like, fool me once with drink this lemonade, shame on me, fool me 2 times. I don't think so.
And then we find out that the car that was stolen was Eugene's car, and like I said, at the time I thought he was an adult, and so I was confused, because I was like, what would he be doing in Harlanville? Because Cash stole the car because his own broke down, and he needed to get to the newspaper, so he was grabbing whatever was closest and convenient. It's not like he went to Odyssey to steal a car. But then we find out it was because there was like a science fair or something that was there, and he'd stolen it from the parking lot. So there was literally, it was among many other cars. It could have been any of them.
I didn't really think about it until, like, about a week ago. But the Burnetts could still adopt Eugene. Like, you can be adopted as an adult.
I guess.
Like, and I was thinking, like, I wonder if... I don't know if they would, like, actually do that, because Leonard is alive, and that would mean you have to acknowledge the fact, show writers, that Leonard is alive. So, like, I don't know if Eugene would actually want that, but I do think it could bring, like,
it's insane to me that they still refuse to, in all of this talk about Eugene and his past and, like, growing up as an orphan and being in the foster system and talking about
and
Buck
the fact that
and his...
House is a regular character.
And Buck and his connection with his father. And
is it because of Everett?
No, I don't think so. It's just, like, I don't care if they come back. I mean, I do. It would be cool if they come back.
You do care, and don't lie to me.
But I just want them to acknowledge the fact that, like, Eugene's dad is alive. I mean, he's probably passed away now, because they were like, he still only has a handful of years left, even when he went back to Africa.
They said that about Nagito, too.
Yeah.
It's not always true. In real life or in fiction, when you say that about a character.
I know, you can survive a long time. I said probably.
Yeah.
But the point is, I just want him to acknowledge the fact of all of that.
If it makes you feel better, I also want that.
And I also, Leonard aside, I just want him to talk to Buck about, like,
also,
hey, I know what you're going through.
If Leonard is alive, or if Leonard has died, I feel like that's even more reason to bring Everett back.
It is. Into
the show, because, like... What's happening with Everett if he has no one to look after him? Like, I don't think that much time has passed, considering, like, the time flow, and also Everett's age, that he's old enough to really look after himself. Unless Dalton Kern got out of jail way too early and was like, I am your father again now.
I mean, I guess remembering now, like, Will Ryan has passed away, and we don't know how that'll, like, impact, like, what will actually happen.
Yeah.
With all of this, we really have absolutely no idea how that's all going to be dealt with. But it certainly is a nice idea for, what could have been.
Are you saying, like, the Burnetts adopting him, or Leonard coming back?
No, Everett coming back.
Oh, yeah.
So, we find out that Eugene, it wasn't his car, and he went and he was like, some guy stole my car. You know how Eugene sounds. But it was like...
Like a Muppet?
Yeah. He was a kid, like a Muppet mobster. He was a little kid, and Eugene solved the mystery of the Burnett stolen car so he could prove he was a good son, so he could be adopted. And
in the process, ruined his future son's life, and was like, I can't.
He just did it because he wanted to be adopted, and now he ruined his chance at adopting his own son in the future.
The irony, though, it's tangible.
Like, get out of this world, Alanis Morissette. This is like
Shakespearean levels of irony.
This is like such a perfect dictionary encapsulation of tragic irony.
It's man.
And then Eugene's like feeling really bad about it, and then Katrina tries to console him by being like, it's okay, Buck's dad was just a no-good criminal anyways, who did bad things, and he deserved everything that came to him. And then Buck comes downstairs, and he's like, you don't know that. And then he runs away with Jules, and they're like, there was a triple heist. And I was like...
Well, he's, to specify, for whatever reason, if anyone hasn't actually heard these episodes, Buck is being, like, hosted by another foster family at the moment
for,
like,
I forgot about that.
The next little time period. And he said that he was, like, going on a walk late at night or something like that. And that's when he went with Jules.
Yeah. So they went, they were like, there's a crazy, like, quadruple backstab plot of jewelry heists going on, and we need to go break in and get this safe.
I think they're going to be caught.
Yeah, well, at least one of them is going to get caught. I imagine, like, maybe Jules will get snatched up.
Maybe that is Connie on the cover then.
Maybe. Oh,
Connie's
yeah.
Connie's like,
true.
Where's my daughter?
What did you do with it? Especially because the issue is, it turns out when Buck and Jules are trying to do athletic things to get from point A to point B, sometimes Jules just doesn't quite make it 100% of the way there.
Oh, we haven't gotten to the reviewing
which is the other thing we're recording.
Timeline.
It's the other thing we're recording today.
Spoilers. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
for us, not for you guys. That episode won't be coming out for a bit for you guys.
I think it's the next episode.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, it's the next thing to come out after this.
Okay, never mind.
That's everything I have to say about part 2.
I don't have a ton to say.
There's a lot of heartbreak.
Angst.
Kathy did some extremely cruel things to us in terms of weaving an angst web.
All Kathy does is fill me with pain and like hurt comfort when it's anything relating to Buck or Jules, and then just like insanity when it's anything that has to do with Wellington.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 emotions.
This is really good and is really juicy.
It is.
And like I said in our predictions for this episode, I do find it funny that Buck has ended up in back-to-back 3-parters about like trying to be used for his ability to unlock some like secret treasure that was like left for him by his parents.
Yeah. Predictions. Pete's Gash and Chow is gonna burn down.
Apparently, I completely forgot about the cover until you brought it up.
Yeah, I keep on thinking about it.
It's still presumably the place where his cousin works, or Cash's cousin, whatever, where she works. We can only assume that's what is burning down, and I don't know why.
The safe had a self-destruct.
Yeah, it was the map is written on flash paper. Mm-hmm. So they did say like, they read street names, but then afterwards they were like, oh, it's not actually street names. It's actually like the names of the diamonds or something like that.
Yeah.
So they have the map. They're going to try to get away. I'm curious.
I think one of them's going to get caught.
I think either one of them is going to get caught, and so they'll have to like try and help. Like, he'll be like, you have a hostage now. You have to take me to the treasure. Considering
everything we're about to talk about in a couple minutes, I'm kind of hoping Jules gets caught. If one of them is to get caught, I'm so sorry, Jules.
Leave Jules alone. Well, here's the thing: if Jules gets away and she has the safe with her, like, what are they gonna do with it? I mean, Adam doesn't have it, but like, they can't open it without Buck.
So I'm thinking, like, if Jules gets caught, either Buck will go back, or he'll go to Eugene and Katrina.
Yeah.
And he'll have to begrudgingly work together with them.
He'll be like, so there's this thing that's been going on that I haven't told you guys about, but it's kind of a whole thing that I should probably...
Maybe one of those things where it's like, there's so much happening, we need to do a cutaway, or it's like, I'll tell you on the way there, just drive.
Yeah.
But... I'm trying to remember, did Adam have, like, a weapon or anything like that?
Well, I mean, in general, he would, because he's a cop.
Yeah, but, like, when he came to the shed.
Not that we know of. I mean, the dog was barking, and that's what led them there, so we don't know if it's, like, an attack dog or whatnot. Here's the thing. Either one of them gets captured, and then he's like, haha, now you have to help me and take me to where the treasure is, like Blackbeard's treasure style. But the fact that Eugene and Buck and Jules are running out of a burning gas station on the cover makes me think that's probably not going to happen, because then Buck and Jules will probably be isolated until, like, the climax.
Eugene just happens to somehow be driving.
So what I think is Eugene...
Oh, wait. No, we already talked about this in our predictions at the end of part 1. Eugene has that dumb little tracker thing in the car now.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about it. Thank you. Eugene put the tracker in the car.
He's gonna follow them.
Thank you, Victoria, for reminding me.
Left.
Because literally,
Wait,
I was going to say
that, or did you forget about the tracker?
I forgot about that, and I was like, wait, and I was like, no, that's in the other episode.
At the end of part 1, you said like they're going to sneak off at one point, and he's going to have to use the tracker.
I was going to say Eugene is going to rescue them, but I don't know how he's going to know where they are. And it's funny because I was going to say, oh, they have the tracker, but it's like, oh wait, no, that's from the snow thing with Jules and Connie.
Yeah.
But I forgot this also had a thing about
tracking. The funny thing is,
tracking.
in your predictions for the end of that episode, you said they have the tracker in the car, and I said, because I think that's Connie on the cover, I bet Connie also has a tracker in Jules' phone.
I didn't even remember you saying that.
Not even relevant to this. That's relevant to the other episode we're going to be reviewing, and Connie does canonically have a tracker in Jules' phone.
Yeah.
So we were both right.
So, yeah, you're right. So that I was going to say, my other prediction that seems to make more sense is they're going to be running, and then all of a sudden, like, Eugene just, like, pulls up, and it's like, get in the car.
Like Terminator
Yeah,
style,
I was literally about to say, like, come with me if you want to live. Like,
I'm John Connor. Wait, no, not John Connor. John Connor's Sarah Connor's son. What's his name?
Well, the Terminator is the one who says, come with me if you want to live.
What's his name?
Well, the Terminator says it. I guess also
No,
the other guy
it's not originally him who says it. It's like the dad who says it.
I do not remember his name.
I know what his name is. I know what his name is. It's one of those things where, like, I don't even want to look it up.
Yeah.
Because I know what it is.
Anyways, Eugene is going to pull up and be like, get to the job on now. And then they're going to hop in. He's going to drive away. And he's going to be like, what are you guys...
Kyle Reese.
Yeah, that's...
I had to look it up.
They're like, what are you guys doing here? And they're explaining it to him, and they're driving away, and they have the safe and stuff, and they're going to have to investigate the mystery, and it's going to lead them to the diner, and then they're going to commit arson. And then in true a series of unfortunate events fashion, it becomes like a rolling thing, you know, where they're like, now we're the arsonists, and because VFD just kind of keeps on perpetuating this back and forth on both sides of the schism, and it really was, this whole time, Buck's whole saga has been very Count Olaf-y.
Here's my hot take. I think everyone in a series of unfortunate events should be arrested.
You know what?
And you might ask, does that include the Baudelaire children and the what's-their-face triplets, the Quagmire triplets? And the answer to that is probably yes. I haven't decided yet. But, like, the 6 of them get their own area. Like, they're being locked up for their own safety kind of thing, just so no one can touch them. Everyone else, it's, like, horrible conditions.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first, folks. Victoria advocates inhumane conditions for treatment of prisoners.
I advocate inhumane conditions for Count Olaf and Esme Squalor and no one else.
You know, it's funny because in my notes for the other thing we're talking about today, makes no mistake, a series of unfortunate events did come up in that as well.
Time is really just a full circle between this, like, set of multi-parter episodes.
And the interesting thing is it actually has nothing to do with the episode, but in the web doc I learned that a reoccurring actor on Adventures in Odyssey was a character in the Netflix A Series of Unfortunate Events show.
Who?
And we'll find out next episode. I saw it in the web doc, and they did, like, one of these, like, here's a picture of the actor as a kid. Who am I? Based on these clues. I read it, and I was like, series of unfortunate events.
Neil Patrick Harris plays Jules. Let's go.
And I had to look it up, and I was, because I didn't even know based on that if they meant
anagram.
The old one.
Like, you know, Voldemort, Tom Riddle style
yeah.
for Neil Patrick Harris.
Had to look it up because I was like, I don't even know based on this if they're talking about the 2003 movie or the new one. And it was the Netflix one. Someone who is in 2 episodes of the show is a regular character in Odyssey, and we'll find out. We'll find out who
is Katie Lee.
Yes. Okay. I'm really excited for the last part of this. There's a lot of feelings, and I feel at this point like this is. I mean, we said this in the long end. Like, it feels like it's going to be kind of the main closure to Buck's, like, arc in terms of his place in the Meltzner family.
I do think that, but I don't think he's going to become a Christian.
No, I don't think so, because we really haven't even, like, touched on that idea in these episodes.
They're going to, like, adopt him,
yes.
like, at the end of this, sign the papers.
Yeah. So it'll be the end to his finally, like, tossing and turmoiling about, like, whether or not he belongs with the Meltzners and stuff.
I think Buck will have a scene where he does actually meet his cousin, if his cousin isn't evil.
Yeah.
And she'll be really nice and stuff, and he'll be like, you're cool, but also I have a family already, and I'm gonna, like, just sit there and cry. I'm gonna listen to this once we're done recording, and probably play, like, KH or something like that, as I usually do. Mm-hmm. What I'll do is I'll listen to it in one earbud, and I'll have melody and memory going, rhythm game in the other earbud, like a madman.
Like a maniac, yeah.
And just ruin all the dramatic tension they might have with any music they play.
What you have to do is just, like, when you're listening to other stuff, just work on, like, the Master of Masters one, because it's, like...
They don't have that melody and memory.
They don't? I thought they did.
They don't have any Union Cross themes in melody and memory.
Was it just a fan edit that you showed me that level for? I thought they had, like, the one that's all, like, atonal and stuff.
Because
it's in back cover, right?
It is in back cover, but they straight up don't
I thought you showed me that level, and it was like, wow, this must be really hard because it's so arrhythmic.
Either, like, for the boss themes, they have, like, Sephiroth's theme, they have Terranort's, and the big one that they have is, the really hard one is, like, the Enter the Darkness, or whatever. Which is the only
where it's just
one
like
that you can actually play pre-BBS in the timeline. Because they don't really have any Union Cross content in melody and memory. Because it's covering, like, the Darkseeker saga songs. So
I thought they had, you know, it is the Masters theme, right? The one that's just, like, piano smashes. That's like...
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I saw a theory video earlier this week where it's like, I think the false light he's always talking about is actually him. And he's not actually light, he's darkness. Because when I listen to his theme, the last thing I think is, yeah, this sounds like a good guy. This sounds like light. Noble. It sounds like someone I can trust.
Anyways, that's part 2. I'm excited for the end of this, and it's gonna hurt a lot, but there's gonna be some good feels at the end, I think. And so that's all I have to say about this part.
I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it. Kathy, you're doing a great job. Also, all the voice acting. Very good.
But it's breaking my heart.
It is filling me with pain, but good hurt comfort kind of pain.
Oh, it hurts so good.
Yeah. I don't understand the masochists that only read things that are just tagged hurt. Hurt, no comfort. I see that, and I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Okay, so we should end this one because we have to talk about part 3 and the album review overall.
Yeah.
So.
I thought you meant right now. I was
at the end of this episode, but shall not be recorded today.
In the long run.
Yes. So, let's talk about the last part now.
Let's cut to us crying.
All right, now time to talk about finally. As soon as I can, I was like, oh wait, there's no introduction because we're partway through the episode.
You gotta introduce me anyway.
It's still Devin and my sister, Dr. Books. Victoria.
I'm Dr. Books.
Victoria has finished her master's degree. Now, since the last recording.
I'm Dr. Books.
Congrats in the comments. Episode 933, As Buck Would Have It, Part 3, written by Kathy. What happens in the last part, Victoria?
Kathy tries to make me cry. That's what happens.
She tries, and she succeeds.
I teared up, but I was upstairs in the living room while people were running around, and I was like, I can't cry right now.
We ended with them running away from Adam.
Yeah, so as we figured Jewel got, Buck, like, makes a call to Eugene and Katrina, and then goes back to try and grab Jules.
A call in the most generous sense of the term.
He, like, conveniently, accidentally drops the map in a puddle, and like destroys it. And then Adam is like, Buck, give me the map. And Buck's like, yeah, okay. And it's just wrecked. And Adam's just like, no, the treasure's gone.
And also, he, admitted to killing Buck's father is the thing in there.
That too, yeah. That's
not
thing.
Not on purpose. And also, the call that Buck made was not the most successful phone call.
Yeah, it was mostly just Eugene and Katrina hearing like,
they only got like 5 words out of the phone call.
And they're like, our boy's in trouble. And then they're start
help. Station, Harlanville, sheriff, help.
Hurrying to go get him. And then on the way, they recruit lady from Diner.
Candeez
who is
Fitzgibbons.
Buck's cousin, Candeez. And then they
also, Adam pulled a gun on them, which is significant because up till then he hadn't actually done anything wrong, like that they could, say and be like, well, he was being really suspicious about this map, but then he pointed a gun at Jules, which is something that I'm pretty sure cops aren't supposed to do, technically.
So they're being like held at gunpoint, and he's like threatening them and stuff, and then like a gas bomb or something like that, a smoke bomb, goes off in the diner, which they're not
abandoned gas station.
The gas station. They're not burning down the gas station. It was a smoke bomb set by #CoolMom, Katrina Armitage Shanks Meltzner. I don't know why I put her dad's name in there. And so then they run out, and Eugene and Katrina get and then Jules is like, "Fuck, your mom is so cool," and he's like, "My mom is cool," and I was like, "Yeah, she is. She also still owes you an apology for the last bit." I don't really think she actually apologized. She did what I like to call an Ansem the Wise, where the character goes, I did a bad thing, and then never says anything else, or ever says sorry, and then I'm just shaking them, and I'm like, that's not an apology.
How dare you compare Katrina to Ansem the Wise?
That's what he did, though. I've seen people
I know
in the past couple months who have said Ansem apologized, and I am currently replaying KH3, and there are several moments where he was just like, I was a real jerk, I did bad things. He never says sorry. He says, I should apologize, and then he doesn't. It drives me insane. So Adam steals their car, which, as we established in the past parts, no, not Adam. Adam doesn't steal the car. What happens with Adam? How do they get him?
They just leave him there.
Oh, okay. He just suffocates on the smoke, I guess, and they start leaving.
I was confused about that at first, because I was like, they just left him there, and they're like, hey, let's look for the treasure now. I was like, are you going to call the police or something? Like, I'll talk about it later.
The police.
I know, I'll talk about it later, but they just leave. They're like, oh yeah, don't worry, we sabotaged his car too, and then they drove away.
They're like, we gotta look for the treasure, and so then Buck memorized the details of the map, and so then they start looking for the treasure, and they find it, and then Candeez is like, yoink, mine now, I'm evil, and I was like, yes, I called it. I told you. I told you. It was another one of those instances where it was like, I was just finally starting to be like, I misjudged this character. And then they turn out to be evil, which happens so often with me. And she takes their car, and then the car starts spazzing out. So she like pulls it over to the other side of the road. Eugene easily could have killed her. He just kind of cuts the engine, which makes sense, yeah. And then they call the police.
You're right. I guess it does make sense that he didn't decide to kill her.
I don't know. I was just thinking like the car would go crazy and she'd freak out. But it's more like the car goes crazy and then he just cuts the engine and it just slowly like comes to a crawl. And I was like, oh yeah, okay.
He did
that
lock
makes
her
sense.
inside of it though.
He did lock her inside, but, like, he could have just made it go nuts and speed up. But he was like, it'll go crazy and it'll slow down.
He could have driven her off the road. He pulled a Novacom.
She gets arrested, and then they have, like, the jeweler or whatever. I don't think Buck gave it back. He's just like, this is mine now.
No,
I thought he was gonna, like, give it back.
I after the first pass through it, I was like, they didn't say anything about returning it, did they? But when they initially found it, the first thing Katrina said was like, we need to get this to the police right away.
Okay.
And that was the line that was said before Candeez was like, actually,
I'm evil. And,
apples.
Gets adopted by Eugene and Katrina, and I'm like, my baby, and they're like, you are now Buck Meltzner, and I screeched internally like a banshee. It's so weird that he's not going to be called Buck Oliver anymore. Like, I thought it would be like Buck Oliver Meltzner, and they would keep the Oliver, but it sounds like they're just like cutting it.
When they said it, it was like I got hit with a ton of bricks.
Yeah,
you can say that?
Whoa, that's allowed.
I always said
in the past, like, Buck Oliver Meltzner. I never just straight up said Buck Meltzner at any point, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's so weird that he's not being called Buck Oliver. Because, like, his name has basically become one of those names where, like,
yeah, they're paired.
It feels like you need to say the first name and the last name
Matt
together.
Bragg.
So, Jack Manifold. It's weird. It's weird.
Dr. Books.
It's me, Dr. Books. Dr. Books sounds like a character Elise Williams would play.
I was hoping you were going to choke on your drink as I said it. It was perfect time.
Thank you, I guess. I was hoping you would choke. Okay.
I just wanted you to do a spit take.
You're not going to get me that easily.
I mean, Dr. Books is a very funny name.
Dr. Books is very funny, and that's now...
Hi, kids, it's me, Dr. Books!
Sound like the Mad Hatter, whatever that actor's name is.
Hey, kids, it's me, Upsy, your lifting friend. Climb inside my mouth!
In that thing. No, I don't think so.
Careful, it's wet in here.
Ugh. Okay, this episode was really good. The ending was really sweet. There's a very good ending to just, like, the whole, like, foster family adoption arc that Bucks had going on, like, since he first appeared in Green Ring. And it was so sweet. It made me tear up. It was very beautiful at the end. I guess my only complaint was I did kind of want Katrina to apologize a little for what she said.
That's like, fair. But what
I'm sure that happened off screen.
What did we learn about what was the note that was buried with the diamond / what Adam said?
This made that. I think this was like the biggest thing that got me. I like actually like covered my hand over my mouth physically, and I was like, I can't handle
Adam
this.
alluded to it and made us figure it out, but then it was all spelled out in the letter.
So, like, Cash Money Oliver was like, I was worried because I didn't know how to be a dad. And then I heard this boy talking about how badly he wanted a dad and how much it meant to him. And I was just like, oh, it's Eugene. And then they instantly figure out that it's Eugene. And I was like, my heart. And then Buck and Eugene have this bonding moment. And Buck realizes that, like, the reason why Cash wanted to be a good dad, like, to the level that he did to Buck in the first place was because of Eugene. And it's, like, as if their lives were already entwined enough. It is so beautiful. I want to know if Cash found out that, like... Did Cash know that Eugene was the one who got him put in jail?
I don't see any way that he could have known. Because he said he just overheard him in the hallway talking to a social worker. So he wouldn't have known that that's who it was. So Adam alludes to that at the beginning of the episode. And so I was like, Oh, to be fair, though, we don't know if he directly says it because we heard...
I didn't figure it out until the latter.
We heard him allude to it in a flashback where he was arguing with Cash. And he was like, yeah, I know you've wanted to go straight ever since, like, you heard what that kid said in the courthouse. And I was like, oh, so the reason Cash decided to go straight was because Eugene gave him a talking to, which wasn't entirely correct. And that's what convinced him, so he did fix things after all because of Eugene. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And then Adam's like, I won't hesitate. And I was like, okay, we definitely at least have, like, I mean, you couldn't prove it, but that's, like, actionable charges where you can't be like, guys, you need to arrest the sheriff because he seemed really sus about a map that he knew would be in a safe that was in his garage.
I mean, like, even before he pointed a gun at them, I feel like he would have assault charges that could be put on
grabbing
him.
Jules?
Yeah, like, literally anything I've learned from watching Legal Eagle, literally the smallest thing, like touching someone when you don't want them to touch you, just, like, poking them can be technically considered assault, which is kind of ridiculous, but that is how the law works.
Yes, technically, but also remember that he's not just some random guy, he's the sheriff, and so for a teenage girl to be like, hey, I was forcefully handled by the sheriff of this small town, I think you, deputy, should arrest him.
I think, deputy, it's time for you to get a promotion.
Yeah, that's how you spin it. I mean, granted, the fact is also, without proof, even with proof, honestly, I mean, this is America, right? It's even with proof, they could be like, hey, he pointed a gun at the head of this teenage girl, and they'd be like, you know.
Yeah, but, like, she probably started.
Exactly, right? You know, I mean, she was resisting arrest. But the point is, there's a fine line between, like, oh, you know, he kind of, like, rough-handled her, moving her somewhere, and he pointed a gun at her.
He was trying to get this jewel back. She knew where it was. Her name was Jules. Maybe she had to go back into the jewelry store because she was taken. She was working with the son of a criminal and also someone who was in juvie. He's in the right.
Yeah. And that's what they're like. And I call to my defense Detective Polhouse. And then Polhouse shows up and he was like, arrest Buck.
I'm surprised Polhouse didn't show up in this three-parter. I thought he was going to.
Well, especially since he's from Harlanville as well. It wouldn't be surprising.
Plus, he's always, like, nearby, generally, whenever there's, like, a big Buck storyline.
He's always lurking.
Or sometimes even, like, not a big Buck
He's always lurking because he's like, that's my grandson.
He's in disguise. He, like, takes off, like, his little mustache and hat, and he's like, I'm Leonard. No one tell my grandson.
That's why he's been so harsh on Buck. He's like, you need to prove that you're good enough to be my grandson.
Yeah, and then that phone call that Polhouse had in private with his mom was definitely a trap for the audience. No one else heard it.
So, when the Buck bursts in and he was like, let Jules go. I have the map. And he's like, I destroyed the map. Haha. And if Katrina hadn't thrown the smoke bomb through at that moment, probably wouldn't have been bad, because that was the moment
we're mad.
We're about to duck out of the way of oncoming gunfire. But it's like, all of a sudden the smoke bombs fly in, and fortunately, Buck and Jules are both able to get out of there, but Adam is, like, trapped in the smoke haze. The vape from the vine. That's it. It's a smoke bomb.
Oh my gosh. The pieces were all there all along, Mr. Detective.
Mr. Detective Polhouse. So Buck is like, man, I was surprised, Katrina, that you broke into the cop car to steal some smoke bombs while Eugene killed the engine. And Katrina was like, really? And she was like, really? And I thought she was going to end that sentence with, like, well, it's not like it was the first time because of post-Novacom shenanigans, but she was just like, I thought it was quite logical.
Katrina's like, one, what else would I have done? Two, I've done this so many times before. 3, I am Indiana Jones.
She was like, Buck, if I had a nickel for every time I had to break into a cop car to steal smoke grenades, we wouldn't even need that diamond. And
she's like, not just because I've done it so many times, also because I'm very rich. Hi, I'm Katrina Shanks. Nice to meet you.
So they go and they follow the treasure map. They dig up the diamond, and they get the note from Buck's dad. And he was supposed to go and dig it up when Buck turned 16. And he's like, I'm here with you and stuff, hopefully. And like, I'm so proud of you. And I just want to know you the story where I was at the courthouse and I heard this kid talking to a social worker, and he was like, I don't care about money or anything like that. I just wish that I had a dad who wanted me. And so that's when I was like, I gotta do the right thing because of that. And Eugene's like, and Buck's like, and I was like, same.
Yeah.
And then Candeez is like,
yeah, and so was
surprise.
Candeez. I told you.
Well, here's the crazy thing is,
she's evil. I told you, didn't believe me. You didn't believe me about the sheriff.
To be fair, I didn't suspect the sheriff was evil until you said it. I did believe you once you said it. I was like, oh yeah, you're definitely right. Candeez, I was like, maybe. But once Adam laid out his whole plan, but he didn't mention, Candeez didn't mention her as a cohort in any of it. And I was like, oh, maybe she is good. But then she was like, that idiot. No, I'm another bad guy.
Dunked on, idiots.
She's like, I wasn't even working with him. We were just 2 separate entities. I was like, it's like the search for wit. Except I guess they were 2 separate ones who were working together the whole time. So it's the opposite of that. Never mind.
It's just like the search for wit, except for all the ways it's not.
So she's like, I also knew about everything mostly because I was just eavesdropping like Humpty Dumpty the whole time. I was there and I overheard.
I was there the whole time. Gets carried away by birds while T-posing. What a great movie. And by great movie, I mean that one scene and nothing else in the movie.
It wasn't that long ago that I referenced that. And I was like, hey, Alex, do you know what I'm referring to? And they're like, no. And then I showed them the video and they were like, that was amazing.
What did they like it? That's
did you watch the Mummy clip that I sent you?
No, I got it on my phone and I couldn't watch it on my phone the way it was. So I was gonna watch it on my computer and forgot.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, she was like, no, I was the other person in the jewel heist because I cleaned for the jewel guy.
I cleaned house.
And I was the partner for that one. But then I was at the diner and I heard that it was in the safe and the treasure map and stuff like that. So Adam sent the text to lure Buck in, which I guess was a complete coincidence that this is at the same time that Candeez knew that the adoption was being finalized and was like, hey, I'm going to be like, hey, I'm a relative. Send Buck to me so that I can use him to
Hey, I'm irrelevant.
So, like you asked, because I was like, wait a minute, and I had to rewind a little bit the first time and check. I was like, so when they fled the gas station, they just left Adam there. Like, I understand why, because they had to run away, and there was no...
He likes the smoke, Devin. He's going to be upset when it disappears.
I understand why they had to run, because there was no cell coverage there, so they wouldn't be able to call the police to get him, and they didn't know what was even going on until they already got there, so like they couldn't have phoned beforehand. They just had to sabotage his car and get out of there. But it's wild to me that, as far as we knew up until like the very end, even through all the stuff with Candeez, it's not until they're talking to the newspaper guy at the end, Mr. Graintree, that I was like, as far as we know, they didn't even call it in as soon as they could. They just like they're like, you know, let's just take the L on this one and let him go free. But because like I said, it wouldn't be easy given that he was the sheriff of this small town, that like, even if they had 4 testimonies against one, they wouldn't even if they were like, okay, we believe you, they wouldn't immediately lock up another cop on the word of some random folks from out of town who claimed that the sheriff held some teens at gunpoint for a treasure map. Right? They would, even if they did lock him up, they wouldn't be like, oh, we're immediately going to put you in holding until we sort this out.
Yeah, it sure sounds a lot like Blackbeard's Treasure. Did you get Blackbeard's Treasure vibes?
I mentioned it in the last episode.
Yeah. Between listening to this 3-parter and starting to watch Our Flag Means Death, I'm just like, I have Blackbeard's Treasure on my mind so much recently.
Given that literal Blackbeard is a character in the other thing you mentioned,
yeah, and when he shows up, I was just like, it's Edward Teach. Whatever. They call him Tetch in the episode, don't they?
They do, which I always found very confusing.
In Our Flag Means Death, they're like, Edward Teach.
Well, because it's spelled...
Taika Waititi's like, I'm Edward Teach, rhymes with beach. And I was like, I love this man.
Here's the thing. It's spelled Teach, like the word teach. And I'd always said it that way. And I was
saying Tetch, and they kept on saying teach in the show. And then I was like, I've been saying it wrong because of Odyssey.
I was always very confused about why they're like, Ned Tatch, because also I didn't make the connection for a long time in my mind of like, oh yeah, Ned is short for Edward. And I was like, his name was Teach. It wasn't until a long time I was like, oh, maybe that's just how you pronounce it, and I've never heard it said out loud before. I thought that was how you
pronounced it, and then I watched Our Flag Means Death. Why do I keep saying it wrong? And then I was like, I was wrong forever.
And then I found out in the guide, I think that there was like a deleted scene where they found a sign that said like Ned Tatch on it, which is why that happened, because I was always confused, because in the episode when they bring it up, they're like, just like the sign. I was like, what sign?
You know that sign, they point to it, but you can't
sorry, I forgot, because it's an audio drama. Yeah, you're right. Just like that sign.
That sign over there.
Yeah, that one, see?
How many fingers am I holding up? I don't know. It's an audio program.
How many fingers am I holding up?
Look at how tall you are. Last time you were this tall.
Last time you were this tall, and now you're this tall.
You've grown so much, or so little. I can't really tell.
So yeah, the Candeez steals the car, and then finally we get so she clarifies that when they originally visited the diner, she knew who they were, because she already did her research. She'd been keeping tabs on Buck because she overheard that he was the key to the safe that had the treasure map to the diamond. And she had there was someone else at the diner who was working with her, and when she saw that they came in, he planted a tracker on their car. And she was the one who sabotaged Buck's car, which is why they had to run on foot to the gas station. Or I guess why they couldn't get away, and then Jules got caught and went to the gas station with Adam. So she sabotaged their car because she knew that Buck would manage to call Eugene and Katrina for help, and they would come to the rescue, and then she could just follow the tracker on the car. Because I was like, at first I was like, well, why would she sabotage Buck's car and then just leave? Because it's not like she was
in a silly, goofy mood.
It's not like she was like hiding in the bushes watching to see what happened, because she was just at the diner working. Or not working. She was just at the diner hanging out when Eugene and Katrina showed up. So she was like, okay, sabotage your car. This is the day everything kicks off. And then she just went to her job and ate some pie. And I was like...
Queen.
But she was just keeping track of the tracker on their car. Because she was like, I knew that they would come rescue you, and then you guys would go after the diamond. And then I could just follow the tracker on their car. So I had to take your car out of the equation, so I knew their car would go there, and then I could follow the tracker, and she stole it. And then that's when Eugene uses the remote control function.
And she's like, and if the car is going 80 miles per hour and I am going this way and this way, how long will it take me to get back and cash that diamond? And Eugene's like, you never will. Then he destroys the car.
He hit the self-destruct button. And he's like, who knows what happened?
Who knows what happened to Candeez? Who can
Eugene's
say?
Like, Buck can tell you. This is what happens when someone steals my car.
Oh, no! No! Oh, it's like Elizabeth's kiss of death in Pirates. She kisses you when you die. If you steal Eugene's car, you die.
You die in a vehicular accident. He drove into the river, Bob. He drove into the river, Bob. Yeah, she's like, yeah, Frankie, good, you with the tracker. We're going to the airstrip, have the plane ready. But then he stops it, and he locks her in the car, and she's stuck inside it, and then the cops show up, and they arrest her, and they arrest Adam, and then they go back to Mr. Greentree, and they tell him everything, and they're like, time to go do the adoption now. Because we love you, and you're our son, and it's not a family without you anymore.
And Buck's like, and we're all like,
and then they're like, yep, and I'm a judge, and you're Buck Meltzner now. And then he calls them mom and dad. He says mom and dad to them, Victoria.
Okay, I feel like there's still so much stuff we've got to resolve with Buck as a character, though.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is just the end of his...
No, I'm saying that, like, Eugene's probably gonna be recast, right?
I think he has to be, because they can't just end Buck's arc here, and they can't continue it with just Katrina.
It'd be weird if you just continued Buck's arc, and then you either, especially now, either cut Katrina and Eugene, or you just cut Eugene.
Buck's like, actually, I'm moving in with Connie and Jules now.
Connie's my cool aunt.
Yeah, he calls them mom and dad. It was very emotional. And then there's the bonus track with the clip from Robbie Bruce's original audition.
Oh, I forgot to listen to that. Darn it.
They play some of the audio where he was doing lines to Mr. Skint, except he was just doing them with like someone on the team. It was like Marshall Young or someone, I don't remember. And Robbie Bruce is like, yeah, I grew up listening to Odyssey and stuff, so it was exciting. And Eugene was my favorite character growing up because, just like him, I was like this nerdy kid where I felt like kind of on the outside and stuff too. So he was my favorite character I related to the most. And now he's my dad. And I was like, I'm gonna combust.
Crying, screaming, throwing up. Oh, I need to listen to that bonus track. I can't believe I forgot to. That's so sweet.
It really was. The fact that they waited to drop that bomb on us until now was...
That's like the same energy as Peter Davison being David Tennant's like favorite doctor, and then him marrying like...
his daughter, yeah.
Georgia?
So, yeah.
And then... like becoming his son-in-law and becoming the Doctor in Doctor Who.
Yeah, that one.
That's what I call a pro gamer move.
You really min-maxed that one.
Me, Professor Books, Dr. Books. Yeah, nailed it.
That one thing where someone asked Peter Davison, and they're like, "What's like the most unique gift that a fan ever gave you?" And he's like, "A grandson."
That's such a funny answer.
Yeah, it was really good. 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
It was a great conclusion. Like, if I had to level any criticism at all, I think it would be that it feels kind of weird that, like, conceptually there's so much similarity to The Long End, where it's like, oh, once again, we have a Harlanville-related thing where Buck's learning about his past, and someone's trying to, like, take advantage of him so that they can unlock a treasure left behind by his parents.
He's like, and how many more treasures did my dad leave behind that I have? He's become young Indiana Jones.
Yeah, right? It's like, it's just, this episode on its own is fantastic. It's just weird that it happened twice.
I will say, I do think it's better than The Long End.
And I mean, The Long End did lead into this one, because The Long End is what, introduced Cash and, like, opened up all these questions about Buck's dad that needed a resolution and stuff like that. It was just, right, when we were trying to figure out at the beginning, like, what's going to happen, I was like, I mean, it seems like, but surely they wouldn't do immediately again, like, oh, there's some kind of treasure, and we're trying to bring Buck in here because somehow, like, he's the only one that we can use in order to get this treasure that was left behind for him. And it's like, again? but I mean, apart from that, and as you pointed out, the fact that Katrina never actually apologized for what she said about Cash, so good. So very good. Emotional payoff was immense. We got, I mean, even just Eugene's emotional stuff, like independent of Buck, just learning about like him as a kid and like never being adopted and all of these things where he was like,
the stuff with Eugene and Buck was my favorite.
Just like Eugene on his own, like that alone was so good. Like his own past, like deep yearning for acceptance and to be adopted was like such a great. Sweet. I mean, and it makes so much sense, like, with his character, like, you know, with all the stuff that's ever happened between him and Whit as a father figure and stuff like that. You know, look to Whit leaving for the Middle East and Eugene not getting to say goodbye and how that played into, like, the time has come and stuff like that.
Me and part one, we're looking at Connie and Eugene. I'm like, it's the daddy issues and the abandonment issues.
Exactly. Like, you take all that stuff, and we've always known, you know, we've said it so many times before, Eugene's entire life has been like this one long string of abandonment issues compounding on each other that culminated in the time has come. So the way that like we've really kind of fleshed out the depth of that at this critical point in his young life, I think is really powerful and meaningful. So to take that and then on a literal plot, like coincidental, like way in the past way, tie that into what happened to Buck's family, both in a negative way, but then in a positive way, was excellent.
I'm going to say, I agree with like everything you've said, so I'm going to say something different. I agree with your rating. Also, just generally, every time there's a Buck episode, I always kind of wonder what's going on with Sparky. Because there are always certain times where I'm like, it's kind of weird that Sparky's never being mentioned or showing up.
Yeah.
Which I get is like, animals can kind of be a pain to deal with in a show like this, where it's like we have to put in like so much sound effect, like content just for like one single scene. But like Buck leaving, I was like, okay, but what about like your dog? Are you just leaving? And he did mention behind?
Sparky in the first part.
Okay. It's just, because I don't know. I wanted Sparky to be.
Actually, I guess it was the second part when they were going to tell Buck that they were adopting him, and they were like, "We have a surprise for you," and he was like, "Another dog," and they were like,
"Oh, that's true."
But yeah, I didn't think about that. He did just like walk out, and I guess left Sparky with them.
That's so sad. Sparky's already been through so much. The only character who's been through more than Buck, or Eugene and Odyssey, is Sparky. Please save that poor dog.
To be fair, I imagine, because Buck couldn't have just been like, I'm going to go stay with these guys and also I'm bringing my dog with them. Like, I don't think if he's going to like just show up somewhere else to stay with them, he'd be able to assume that he'd be able to bring the dog with him. My guess is if Buck had fully followed through on his plan at that time, he would have come back for Sparky later once he was like in like the stable place where he would have been staying next. Then he would have been like, okay, I'm getting my dog now.
Sherman versus Sparky, they're on like two very opposite ends of a scale. They're both very durable, fortunately.
I can't
but
believe.
One is so much stronger and more menacing than the other.
I feel like through everything that they've been through, I feel like I would call Sparky the Chad, honestly, against Sherman.
Yeah, but like...
I see what you mean, because Sherman is so nightmarishly intimidating. Yes.
And Sparky is like a wholesome little guy who I trust implicitly. Sherman would not hesitate to kill everyone.
Oh, Sparky.
Sparky, my sweet boy.
They really did that to him.
Sparky gets 5 out of 5 and so much health care.
Sparky gets, and 3 out of 4 legs.
Leave. Leave and never return.
It was good, and I liked it. That's my review.
Yeah, that's also my review. I'm stealing it.
All right. Should we talk about the whole album then?
Yeah.
All right, let's review all of.
The Other Reindeer. Let's go.
I was trying to remember the album title because I keep on wanting to confuse it because it's The Long Road Home, I believe, right?
That sounds right.
But in my mind, yeah, I keep on wanting, because The Long End is a similar title,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm always worried that I'm conflating the two in my mind because they are similar and similarly themed. Anyways, let's review the whole album now. Album 72, The Long Road Home.
Long Road Home.
Well, because I was...
You gotta say the word long, otherwise people won't know it's long.
I am so confused every time I go to say it about messing it up with... Because I'm like, the long way home, the long plan, the long end. Because already the long end isn't a phrase I knew before the episode came out. Like, it seems kind of weird grammatically, right? The long end.
I still like this cover art. I'm a little disappointed that didn't turn out to be Connie in the episode, but at the same time, like, it is cool to finally realize just how much Jules and Connie
it really goes
alike.
to show how much they look alike.
I wonder if there's going to be like any future things where we're like, oh, that's Connie or that's Jules, and it turns out to be the other one. I mean, I think it's easier to tell when it's Connie than when it's Jules.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The Lost One, Part 1. Yo, this messed me up. This
I didn't
two-parter.
Fully appreciate on the first pass just how double-standarded Olivia's anger at Zoe was about the play, because Olivia was like, I'm angry, Zoe, that you didn't ask me to be Esther, even though Zoe was completely correct that Olivia would have been mad if she had asked her, because then she would have...
At least I thought I mentioned this.
Well, no. I mean, I agree. Zoe's like, I don't know what to do because I feel like you're mad if I do, mad if you don't. But I was saying, I didn't appreciate just how much, because Olivia's like, I'm angry you didn't ask me. But also, if you had asked me, I would be mad because I would have taken it as an attempt to make me be in a Bible play. But then Olivia asked her if even doing the play at all was a ploy to make her feel bad by excluding her, suggesting that the alternative would be to just not do the play at all right now, even though that would also be Zoe giving Olivia all this special treatment and treating like as though it's a phase that she's going to come out of, and I just need to do the play once Olivia is over this, which Olivia would have resented even more. So there's like a whole other layer of double standard.
Well, it's like I said back then, there's literally no way to please Olivia with what she was going through. She was going to be pissed, like, no matter what happened.
That's why I'm really glad that this is the point where Zoe realized that, and she snapped back at her and stood up for herself, because this is the point where Olivia is the most irrational, and Zoe did absolutely nothing wrong this time, and Zoe was like, look, there's nothing, like, I know it, when it sounds like when you use that phrase, but literally there's nothing I can do to please you. No matter what I do, you're going to be angry at me about it. And if this is the way you want to keep treating me, then like, I'm not going to try anymore, because
I just realized how very long ago we listened to these episodes, because I was still working on my Chain of Memories plat when I listened to these, and I was like, wow, that was a while ago.
This episode did come out early. So it was like 5 months ago.
We did listen to this episode early.
Yeah, it was like the beginning of December. And then in part 2, Olivia did give a time frame for the events here. She said it had been 6 weeks from the play since she had been talking to Leonid. So that gives us kind of a time frame for how long things took.
So it'd be like a little over 6 weeks.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe it's been 7 weeks or so overall.
That sounds right. So about 2 months.
Yeah. Olivia's reveal about why she was so affected by Mr. Norton's death, and then Whit's corresponding reveal, it just hit so hard. It was an absolute brilliant writing choice. It is gutting, especially because of the fact that it's not like it came out of left field, in that it is specifically something we've been trying to guess at for an entire season. We were trying to guess at what the connection was there. So it's like something it's not like, oh, it's this thing that came in and we're like, oh, that's crazy. Like, we had been trying to puzzle it out and were completely unsuccessful. And then that came in, and it made absolutely perfect sense. It lined up with everything so well, and yet it was still so surprising that that was the answer, that it was just like gutting. Like, it was such a good writing choice.
And also, like, Leonid is creepy now. You can't really listen to his stuff again.
I didn't think about the creepy stuff until it happened. It wasn't as creepy as I remember from the first time, probably because it was so surprising, like, when it happened, and I think that augmented the experience. But when he was, like, sticking his finger in the pencil sharpener, I wasn't thinking about, like, later when he goes
also,
like, not Russian.
This title is, like, very, very well earned, I would say, because it feels like so many things are, like, being wrapped up story-wise in this album.
Oh, the title of the album, you mean?
Yeah.
I just realized, I think the title, because I was like, oh, it's Olivia, you know, the lost one. I just realized, I think it's specifically alluding to the parable of the 99 sheep.
Yeah,
I just realized that. Well, because you said the title, and I was like,
you just got that. They, like, talk about that story.
Exactly, and that's why I figured it out. Well, she doesn't talk about it until the end of part 2.
Yeah. How?
Well, because I read the title and I was like, oh yeah, it's Olivia. You know, she's the lost one. She's the one who will fall.
Okay.
Prophesied in the ancient texts of Wit's grandpa's journal.
The ancient texts of the Jesus cloth in Wit's baby cradle.
Yeah.
Just at the end, I'm so glad the professor's wife showed up in the end, because I really wanted that to happen. Honestly, like, this was such a good end to, like, such an amazing end to an incredible mini arc.
Yeah.
Like, it was so good. Every moment in this 2-parter felt earned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that, like, I don't know. I'm just gonna say it now. Like, out of ranking, I guess there's only 3 things to rank in this album, but this is definitely my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I adored As Buck Would Have It, but I think I'd have to put this above it still, because this is just so, like, good.
Immaculately,
I think in terms of, like,
and crafted,
kind of
and the payoff.
Little mini-series bits that are, like, really more spiritually and character-focused than plot-focused. I think, like, I'll always have life expectancy as number 1, but I think I would put this arc, like, right underneath that, if we could consider that, like, the same sized unit of kind of payout for that whole thing, because this whole thing has been handled so well in terms of examining, like, you know, faith and questioning it and struggling and asking hard questions and coming away from it or back to it and stuff like that, and, like, suffering and loss. And I'm, like you said, I'm so glad that Mrs. Norton got to be there, and she got to kind of, you know, fill in some of the gaps where she was like, look, you know, it sucks that my husband has passed away, obviously, but, and it's not your fault. And while it's not like, oh, it's a good thing that he passed away, it's also like, you know, he made the choices that he made, and there are reasons that he made them, and you're not responsible for those things that have happened.
I think that, like, since the hiatus, my 2 favorite story arcs have been this one and just, like, the Rydell saga, probably. Because, like, yeah, when I think of, like, best episodes in the recent, like, chunk of years in Odyssey, I think of, like, all the episodes in this
You're like,
arc.
I hate Buck and Jewel.
And the escape room episode, I think, was just, like, really, really, really good. Like, I did miss Mori and Suzu a lot this album. But I guess we are used to only getting them every second album.
And also Unrelatable. Those are some crazy episodes.
Oh, Unrelatable was an insane episode. Oh my gosh.
Could you imagine?
I still only heard that one once, but it's because, like, I'm still reeling from the first time I heard it. That episode gives me, like, Red Eye energy, where it's like I listened to it and I'm like, this just completely was not what I expected.
I feel like
so well written.
I feel like I still have the sense memory of the first time that I heard the fire alarm going off over the phone in that episode, and I just felt like all the blood drained from my head.
Oh, that episode is so... I can remember exactly what I was doing when I was listening to so many different parts in that episode.
Could you imagine
like, oh
if,
gosh.
like, the escape room episode had come out in, like, album 2 or something like that?
Like, of Odyssey?
Yeah. Like, if they'd...
No.
It's just one of those... Like, these two
they had
happened,
the secret
like...
room in album 2.
I know, but it's just, like, those two episodes are both, like, so crazy intense that I'm like, they could not have made those episodes of this show, like way farther in the past.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This show has had other intense things happen before, but, like...
Those two episodes were, like, Novacom level, like,
it
intense,
was, like,
though.
Sacrificial Escape was, like, literally a Saw movie.
It pretty much is.
Anyways, The Lost One was a phenomenal wrap to, like, one of the best arcs that this show has ever done in 35 years of being on the air.
I heavily agree with that.
Judgment You Tender, still very good. I'm very glad that Bridget and Jules get to be friends, and I really hope we get to see them more together because they're two of my favorite characters on the show right now.
Mm-hmm. Same. I'm so glad that they became friends. They're perfect characters to just mix together. Like, I know we've said it before, but since we're definitely not really... I think we can pretty safely say at this point we're not going to get any more, like, big character depth moments with Valerie. So...
Probably not.
I'm really glad that we have Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
I think Valerie is to Adventures in Odyssey what Chloe is to Miraculous Ladybug.
Uh-huh.
Where it's just like you have this kind of like bully character who starts off like really superficial and shallow, and then you have all these moments of insight, and you're just like, hey, can we focus on that? And then the show's like, no, go fetch.
On Twitter, Thomas does claim that it's still like slow burning towards ultimate redemption.
That's a lie. That's a lie. That man is lying to you.
He was like, if it was quick and easy, it wouldn't be meaningful.
Chloe. He hates her so much. That man is a liar. I heard he gets in a lot of arguments with fans on Twitter about stuff.
Yes. To be fair, there's some crazy people on Twitter.
Yeah, I know, that's true.
People say some terrible things to him on Twitter, which is why he gets in arguments with them.
Yeah. I stopped going on Twitter for like several days this week, and I was just like, man, I feel so much more at peace.
Speaking of social media, which is adjacent to reality television, in Judge Me Tender, the second reality TV show, the one that we hear at the very end, it said 27 janitors, and the first time we talked about it, I 100% thought it was 27 Jennifers. Now, what I heard is so much funnier, I have to say. It does make more sense because they're like, and there's an anaconda loose in the bathroom. So I was like, okay, the janitors thing, it makes more sense. But 27 Jennifers, I maintain, as I theorized about in the original review, is so much funnier because imagining a reality TV show where every contestant has the same name is so funny on multiple levels because as a casting process, absolutely bananas because there's no reason for this criteria except to confuse everyone, and it would be so
I bet there'd be like all this controversy over people who pretended their name was that name and it turned out not to be, and it's like, get off the show, you lie.
There's gonna be like Obama style birth truthers where they're like, show us the birth certificate. Because just imagining all the bottom chyrons having to come up with nicknames for them.
No, the thing is, I bet all 27 Jennifers have their names spelled differently from each other. Like some have it with a Y, some have it with
because they're extremely
some have
white.
it with like a G at the beginning, some with a J. Some have like, instead of an F, they have like a PH. The name is just completely unreadable. But yeah, it starts off like normal. They get the most normally spelled Jennifer name. And then every single time, it just gets like one letter different between the 27. And by the time you get to the end of the 27, you just like, the name is undecipherable, but you know it's pronounced Jennifer.
It looks like 1200s English, like 13th century English. It's like GENNYPHERE.
It's just someone, and it says like Philip, and they're like, it's pronounced Jennifer. I think this version's a lot better. I was like, Jennifer, yes? No, I wasn't calling you. If you listen very closely to how I pronounce the name, I was calling for Jennifer, not Jennifer.
Our language actually has 27 different pronunciations of Jennifer, depending on the intonation. They have very different meanings.
If you hear, I had a little uptick at the end of the name when I pronounced it, and that's how you know I'm talking to Jennifer, not Jennifer.
No, I was talking about Jennifer.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. It's Jennifer, not Jennifer.
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 And then Jafar is there. What was I going to say now? Oh yeah, when I listened to the trailer, cause I heard 27 janitors, and then the thing ended. I was like, wait, where's the joke about them all having the same name? And to think about a second, I replay in my mind. I was like, oh, janitors. I thought
You're
was
listening
Jennifer's.
To it, you're like, but I thought the person in the hospital with brain damage was a boy.
Look, okay, I never claimed to be good at listening to things on our audio drama podcast of 200 episodes. Look, when we hear minor, we just all assume it's a young boy, okay?
Mm-hmm. We assume it's a little dwarf running around from Snow White.
I just assumed it was a young little coal miner. It was a young little baby canary boy with terrible brain damage.
Oh no.
Oh no, terrible Hatful DLC from the 1800s.
Nice, Nageki. Oh
no,
Nageki.
He's trapped in the coal mine basement fire.
As Buck would have it.
Okay, here's some cool things on the re-listen.
Didn't bother mentioning in our review that we just did?
From part 1, that I didn't notice until the re-listen, and I didn't bring them up, so I can bring them up now. On part 1, didn't remember this, but this is the big one. Near the beginning of part 1, when Eugene first mentions his struggle to be adopted by the Burnetts, the first thing he says is that I installed a fan in the shower, and I did this and that. I even once caught a thief who stole their car, and then there's a couple other things.
You sneak it in there in a list, and no one thinks twice about it. Sneaky Kathy.
He mentioned it completely casually in the first one, did not pick it up at all, did not retain that information. Well, here's the thing. He mentions that in the list, and then he makes like a whole like joke about like the fan in the shower, and it was more soon and stuff like that.
It's sleight of hand. It's verbal sleight of hand.
It was literally sleight of hand.
I should have caught on to that. I do stuff like that all the time. To you, specifically.
Where were you, Dr. Books?
You got me.
Also,
it was me, Dr. Books, all along.
Also, you're an evil doctor, like a comic book. I should have figured it out.
You should have seen this. Who came up with the name? You or Alex?
I did.
Yeah, you brought this upon yourself then.
Also, when they first meet Adam, and he's like, yeah, I have your dad's stuff. You guys should come by my house sometime. It's just outside of town, just past the abandoned gas station. Which the phrase abandoned gas station completely missed in terms of assessing what the art would be about. Because beyond everything else, like, we keep on being like, where's this gas station going to come in? Where's this gas station going to come in? Is that the diner? And he said abandoned gas station in the first episode, completely didn't hear that.
And we're like, Kathy's like, it could be the abandoned gas station. We're like, nah.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. This sign don't
never heard of that.
Your foreshadowing can't fool me because I can't listen. I liked in part 3 when Buck and Jules, I love Buck and Jules' handshake emoji with Connie and Eugene of being held up at gunpoint to shut up, but just insisting on being like, look, we're just friends, and I really think like everyone is always just being like, oh, look at them, they're like so close to each other.
And Jules is like, I mean, like, if he asked to be my boyfriend, I wouldn't be like,
she was like, I mean, like, not like I would say no or anything, but like a boy space friend and stuff. And I was like, that in and of itself we didn't address the first time, but also the way where he's like, I'm pointing a gun at your head, and she's like, look, I'm just going to go on kind of a rambly monologue about how everyone's always misassessing what our relationship is. And I was like, this is literally what Eugene did about Connie in Hold Up, when he also had a gun pointed at him.
It's so funny. All this time, really we thought that, like, Eugene was, or, like, Buck took after Eugene, and Jules took after Connie, but it was actually, like, the other way around.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, because
that's the source of all their conflicts with each other.
That's why, like I said, that's why I want an episode where they child swap.
Yeah, it's bad.
I want it really bad.
I want Buck and Connie episode.
But, because, like, Buck and Connie had, like, that one interaction, like, on campus at Campbell County Community College.
Yeah.
And I love that scene. And I need more of it. And it's funny, because, like, earlier in this 3-parter, when we were reviewing it, we were talking about the fact that, like, oh, we don't really know if, like, they're technically a couple or not. We don't really think they know either.
Yeah, it was nice.
And then they finally flat out addressed it.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised we forgot to mention that.
Nice
I was
to have
like,
confirmation that they're not actually a couple, technically.
Yeah, she was like, I mean, everyone always says that, and, like, not like I would be opposed to it. Also, Eugene and Katrina, they're like, we're going to go dig up the treasure. And they're like, and we just so happen to have some shovels on us, courtesy of a local garden center. And I was like, that is a good tie back to part 1. And the fact that they had shovels on them is a really good thing for that.
Why did they have shovels again?
Because they were like, we need to go spy on this Candeez person, but that would be wrong. But they do have a local garden center there.
Oh,
okay. And we should pick up some stuff, and maybe we'll stop at the diner on the way. And
I think someone should have gotten hit with a shovel at some point.
I was like, we have some shovels, so now we can bury the bodies.
I don't really have much else to...
Yeah, we said our stuff about it. It was really good. I mean...
Good album.
Very good album.
I feel like the obvious ranking here, I think our rankings are going to be the same, of, like, Lost One, As Buck Would Have It, and then...
Judge Me Tender, yeah.
Judge Me Tender.
And like you said, like, it's a very good ranking because it literally gave As Buck Would Have It 5 out of 5, but it's not in top place because the Lost One was also that good.
But, like, the Lost One was one of the best written 2-parters in all of Odyssey history, so, like... I like Judge Me Tender, but it, like, pales in it feels like, I don't want to say it feels like a bad episode, but, like, in comparison to how good everything else was.
It's out of its league unfairly in comparison to these.
I feel bad for it. The other episodes make it look bad.
I mean, I don't feel bad for it just because in its own review, we spoke very highly of the episode.
Yeah, it's a good episode, but, like, in having it right after the Lost One, it's like, oh, this isn't fair to you.
It's not the first time a good episode has gotten, like, overshadowed in a summary by, like, Amazing One. And when we did our predictions for this album, we were like, I feel like this is going to be a phenomenal album. And we said that after we finished The Lost One Part 2, because we're like, this is so good, and I'm sure the Buck one is going to be really good, and if it is, then this is going to be, like, an all-time album.
And it was, like, I'm going to give this album, like... should I give it 5 stars?
Yeah, we do usually do an overall rating, right? I'm going to give it 5 stars.
I'm going to give it, like, 4.9 or 5. 4.9999. You know what? 5 stars. 5 stars.
Yeah. And, like, especially, you know, if we think about how, like, all the 6-episode albums are really kind of, like, you know, if we link them together to an original full-length album, if you took 71 and 72 together, because 71 has all of like the main body of Olivia's arc, and then like you chain that together with this, so it's like one full-sized season where we have all of Olivia's arc, and then Judge Me Tender.
That would have been the most bonkers album ever.
It is,
oh my
like,
gosh.
Looking at those two together as a package, this is like one of the best like 12 episode runs that Odyssey's ever done before.
If like you honestly, with that in mind, I feel like it's a good thing that they split them up into 6.
It would have been
because
too
if
powerful.
you just saw me like at the end of listening to all 12 episodes consecutively, I'd just be like laying prone on the ground, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was this album.
This album was so heckin' good.
It was so good. And yeah.
Oh, I want to listen. When does the next one come out?
I don't know. I haven't checked yet. It's probably in the next, like, probably in June around-ish is usually.
Okay, that's not too far away.
Album 73. We won't be doing our predictions for it. Is that the title?
What's the title there?
Interesting.
Every time you look at something, you're like, ooh, and I can't see it. It's like, Devin, stop making faces. Stop. It better say Richard comes. Richard better be on that album cover. It's Richard and Wellington.
There's no cover yet.
And they're high-fiving. The title of the album is
won't do our
Richard
predictions.
Maxwell's Return.
We won't do our predictions. I accidentally saw one character name in the description.
Show me.
Here's the thing.
Can we play 20 questions? Let me guess who it is.
Well, I'll say this. The title of the album is 28 Hours. That is the title.
That sounds like a 24 hours.
That's why I saw it and I was like, that's an interesting title. Here's another interesting thing.
Action-y episode is going to be in that album.
It is a 6-parter.
Oh.
It is all one episode.
Oh, but it's gonna be like Mori Suzu.
I think it's like a 24 style, like.
Yeah,
like
that's my guess.
I over glance at the description, I don't know if it was wishful thinking, or I saw something about like a bomb, like it had like a bomb's going to go off in 28 hours or something like that. Like
it's in a bank. It's going to be in a bank. It's
and you know, I hopefully people didn't want to know this stuff yet. They stopped listening when I talked about it.
Stop listening right now, everyone.
Is this just predictions? Because it's only one thing.
This is predictions now.
Should we stick to predictions in here?
We don't have
the art yet though.
That's fine. We'll look at the art later.
Okay.
Predictions.
Surprise predictions. We didn't know this was going to happen, but there's only one title, so it's not long. It's called 28 Hours. Should I read the album description?
Yeah, read it. We're just
okay. Well, I'll say this. It's a 6-part. Okay. I'll say this because it comes up later. The name that I saw in the description at the glance was Jillian.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Jason Jillian's spy adventure, yeah.
The clock is ticking towards an explosive confrontation as your friends from Odyssey race to solve the mystery and save the world in this special 6-part adventure.
It's in a bomb. It's in a bank.
Hours.
I can already tell you now, the bomb is in a bank. It's a bank heist.
What does save the world mean, though? That's more than a bomb.
Jillian saves the world every single day her own special way.
To Jason Whittaker, it was just another morning in Odyssey. Birds were chirping, sunshine warmed his back. The only urgent item on his agenda was helping Connie Kendall get her car started again. But then Jason's phone rings, alerting him to a crime at J&J Antiques that will set in motion a day the Odyssey gang will never forget over the next several hours. I wonder how many. Jason, Connie, Whit, and Jillian become entangled in a mystery that threatens the future of their beloved town and even the entire world.
Oh my gosh,
could such a nice day really end in the start of war? Will Jason really have to sacrifice himself to prevent the deaths of thousands? Is anyone going to make it out of this day alive? And as Connie asks with frustration, is anyone in this town really who they say they are? Jillian? Jillian? Hello?
If Jillian turns out to be evil, my heart is actually going to break, and also I'm going to be rooting for her to take over the world or whatever.
But I do think she has,
Jillian's going to end up being a secret spy.
She has a lot more to her past than we know just because there's so much in her past. But I think there's something pretty big she's not telling us probably.
I need it to be June.
What could be happening at J&J's that could involve Jason having to sacrifice himself to prevent a global war and prevent the death of thousands. That is the most, like...
They found the cloth. They found the cloth from the Young White books.
Like, I mean, they said crime at J&J. It has to be because of Jason and not just the antique shop, right? It has to be related to Jason's past and something.
It might not be. It could just be, like, something really precious was...
That's going to kill thousands of people.
That maybe
just happens to be there.
Spark an international incident.
It's the severed head of Franz Ferdinand.
It's Anastasia Romanov. She's alive.
She's been living in the back room of J&J Antiques. But also...
I want the cover to be, like, Jillian and Jason, both in, like, formal attire, dancing.
In, like, a spot, like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith kind of way.
Yeah.
The death of thousands makes me think, like, is there a bomb that's, like, attached to a vial of Rukuta? Like,
the first thing I thought was, like, the tunnel. But
like,
the tunnel was collapsed, wasn't it?
The tunnel's collapsed, yeah.
They re-collapsed the tunnel.
Secret
tunnel.
Does this have to do with Ruku in some way?
It could. If Tasha shows up, I'm gonna scream. If Tasha shows up and doesn't get to meet Jillian a second time, I'm gonna scream.
Because she showed up and she was like, don't tell Jason I was here.
And I was like, do not tell Jason.
But here's the thing. Listen, this is a 6-part global action adventure story centered on Jason.
Jillian.
Tasha has to show up in this, right? Logically.
I don't want her to.
I want her... What happens if her and Jillian become BFFCs, though? That would
be the funniest outcome.
Exactly. And she doesn't even realize that Jillian, like, knows Jason. Like, she just, like...
If Jillian turns out to be evil somehow, Jason's not going to die. Can we both agree Jason's not going to die?
Obviously, Jason's not going to die.
Especially since they said, like, will Jason die in the description?
That one, like, internet law where it's, like, if a headline or title of a video is a question, the answer is invariably no.
Also, that one bit sounded like a fanfic or something like that.
It's
where it's like,
dramatic.
as Jason woke up on this one morning.
Okay, yeah. The birds were chirping. Sunshine warmed his back.
When you started reading, I was like, is he still reading the description or is he screwing with me?
It's funny because I was like, this is weird, but also it's one episode, and so they don't have to be concise as normal, and they can flower it out a lot more.
I just realized, whenever you do descriptions, I'm never looking at what it actually says. You could throw the most bonkers crap in there, and I would never have any way of knowing if it's actually in the description.
You don't look at it because I don't want you to look ahead. I want you to hear it.
Yeah, I know, but then you could be like,
I could just lie to you.
gets put on a guillotine or something, and then, but like sprinkle it in the middle of a list of things.
The French Revolution reignites, and wit is put to death by the bourgeoisie. Or by the, yeah. Do you hear the people sing?
That'd be like a gritty Les Mis poster, like a gritty reboot of Les Mis. That would be the tagline.
Uh-huh.
Or like someone would have like a gun held up to their head and be like, do you hear the people sing?
You will, this November the 5th.
2 brothers.
2 brothers. 1 Father, 1 Son, and 1 Holy Spirit.
What else? Is there anything else to say? If Jillian turns out to be bad or leaves the show in any way, I will be heartbroken.
I don't see
love her so
any
much.
way that Connie frustratedly asking, is anyone in this town really who they say they are, could be about anything other than Jillian having, like, some kind of secret past.
I think it's going to be Jillian ate Connie's cake that was put in the fridge, and Connie was saving that for later.
SMH,
and Connie's like, you're all traitors.
All these fake people out here every day.
Can't stand her face.
I mean, it's so funny because we already have so vocally established the fact that Jillian is a better spy than Jason is.
We have, so and now it's going to turn out she actually is a spy. Honestly, explains so much. Pop off, queen.
It would be very funny if Jason was like, wait, you were actually a spy the whole time? And she was like, you never asked.
She wouldn't say it. I'm so glad that she is getting the 6-parter she deserves. If it turns out that she's barely in the 6-parter, I'm going to be very disappointed.
Literally, when I
missed her. I missed her so much for so many episodes.
Victoria, all I wanted to do was see if the album had a title, and when I searched it, it said 28 hours, and I just clicked on the page because I wanted to make sure, because I was like, that's weird, because it's written like the number 28, and I was like, I think that's just weird formatting for an album title. All I wanted to do
thought we had 6 episodes now. It's not supposed to be about 28 hours long anymore.
And apparently it's going to be more like 28 days later. All I wanted to do was, I always forget, which one is 28 Days and 28 Days Later? One is the Sandra Bullock film about rehab, and the other's the zombie
one.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I thought. Because I've seen 28.
There's this song called In a House in a Heartbeat, and I've listened to that song a million times. And it's from the zombie movie soundtrack. I haven't seen the movie, but I've listened to the
Because I've seen the film 28 Days, and I was very confused for a long time because people talked about it, and I thought they were saying the same thing. But that's a film about Sandra Bullock going to rehab after she
I've seen that movie too. We had to watch it in French.
Exactly, that's also where I watched it.
I hated that movie. We never got to finish it. I don't actually know how it ends.
And so I was always very confused because people talk about 28 Days Later. I was like, I really don't remember any zombies in that movie. The point being, I was like, is this really the album title? And then I clicked on it and I caught a glance of like one long episode. I was like, is that right? And then I scrolled down to see it was 6 parts, but I caught the name Jillian and I was like, this is too much. I have to say something now. So surprise, we also did the predictions with the album.
You know what? It was a bigger surprise to us than it was to anyone watching, because it's probably going to say in the title of the episode. So.
That's true, and it was also a big surprise to us because we're getting a Jillian 6-parter.
We're getting a Jillian. It crosses out Jason's name, writes Jillian in even bigger letters. We're getting a Jillian 6-parter.
I mean, I'll say this.
This definitely makes up for the fact
I didn't
that
see her name in the album
show
description, Victoria. I saw her name in the episode description, and I think it was the same description for everyone because they're all multi-parts. So the fact that in a 1 to 2 sentence description of the episode, they still said like Jason, Whit, and Jillian or whatever, or Jason, Connie, and Jillian. The fact that her name is in that short list means she is definitely not only a little bit in here.
She is like Jason's partner.
Exactly, she works
at
there.
Work and in
my
life,
point is,
and in love.
My point is, she is going to be a main character in the 6-parter, and
I want Jason and Jillian to have a wedding a la Will and Elizabeth's wedding in the third Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Victoria, do you remember how just minutes ago we talked about how amazing the last 2 albums have been back to back, and now this is coming immediately?
Now we get a Jillian 6-parter. If you told me this a couple minutes ago, which you did, I would have freaked out, which I did, because you did all that. Oh, this is the best timeline, actually. First I get Sora, Strelitzia roommates in KH4, and now I get a Jillian 6-parter.
Media is giving everything to us.
I'm really going through it in the best way.
Yeah. Okay, we should finish this episode.
This is a good week for content.
Next time, what are we talking about, Victoria?
Nothing as exciting as what we just talked about, I can tell you that.
There's a little bit of excitement, because it's Makes No Mistake.
Is it the end of the snow? Oh, it's the snow finale.
Along with the 2021 reviewed and 2022 predictions. So, there's still some excitement. There's some terrible injuries, some grievous bodily harm.
Oh, there's so much. I still don't understand how the healing happens after post-hole
It grows back,
healing.
Victoria.
How?
Bones grow. The same way that you break a bone and then it heals.
I thought bones stop growing once you grow all the way.
But if you break them somewhere in the middle, they will grow back slowly. But like the same way you break a bone, you set it back in place, it heals. So if you
Do you just have like a patch on your head until then?
Yeah, I assume you have something that after they remove. You know what? We won't talk about this here because it's spoilers for the next one. But
we already kind of dropped some spoilers with the whole mentioning boy.
I know. I didn't realize until a minute ago. I was like, oh yeah, we haven't talked about that yet. But whatever. People have already listened to it. It came out 4 months ago.
We watched. Oh my gosh, I watched this movie called 24 last night, and one of the first things in the movie, it had like the problem with the three doors. It had the Monty Hall problem, and then I was like, "Oh, you do the other one, you do the other one," and then the main character was like, "You do the other one," and then I yelled "bone" really loudly, and I laughed for a long time. I was so glad I was watching it with people who have also watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Otherwise,
okay, because I was gonna say
a crazy person.
Yeah.
They knew what scene I was talking about. So.
It's funny because that's one of the most iconic scenes in the show.
That's the funniest scene in the show next to I Want It That Way, and I firmly maintain both those opinions.
And the first time and every subsequent time I've seen that scene, like the first time, the whole bone thing, like I didn't appreciate it whatsoever because in my mind, I was still frustrated at Captain Holt for being so adamantly wrong about the Monty Hall problem that I like didn't even absorb any of the bone part. Because I was like, "You're wrong, Kevin," or "You're."
I remember being really proud of myself because I actually got the answer right, and math is hard.
I mean, it's non-intuitive, which is the whole reason it was so controversial.
But yeah.
Anyways, that's what we're doing next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackard.
And I'm Dr. Books.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.